The story begins when an average restaurant cook gets summoned to save an isekai world with other heroes. A hooded mage quickly steps up to check the stats of all the heroes, getting impressed by a legendary holy swordsman. Then, he finds 2 expert witches with the power to control powerful elements. And finally, he focuses on Mr. Mukouda, who possesses the awe-inspiring talent of ordering online groceries. Mukouda asks if he has any other skill, but the mage shakes his head, sealing his fate as a magical delivery boy. He tells Mukouda to visit the king to learn about his mission. In the king's room, the fat old monarch tells the heroes to find the demon lord, who is causing trouble for his kingdom of Rieseger. As the king reveals that the demon lord can send the heroes back, the other heroes quickly agree to fight for him, while Mukouda feels suspicious of his whole story. He asks the old man if he can sit this adventure out and live like the commoner he is, and the king sends him away with some gold coins. Afterward, he heads out to the city, where everyone stares at his weird corporate wage slave suit. Mukouda changes his outfit and rents a room where he checks his stats to learn that he also has a magic storage and appraisal skill. Then, he uses his grocery skill, which opens a holographic online store. He then inserts some money into the screen and buys some quick food to keep him going, thinking that he can make good money as a chef with this skill to leave the plain country. The next morning, Mukouda rushes to catch a carriage to the town of Keels. On the way there, he asks a merchant what he's going to sell, who tells him that he's going to sell a very precious item called soap. Mukouda feels surprised that soap is so precious and asks the man if he stores his goods in a magic storage. However, the merchant tells him that the magic storage skill is very rare, so he has to carry everything around. Then, Mukouda asks him about the appraisal skill and learns that it's a legendary skill that's practically unheard of. The merchant wonders why he's so interested in these rare skills, but Mukouda claims that he was just dreaming. Then, the merchant tells Mukouda that he made a good call going to a border town because the kingdom is soon planning to seal its borders. Once Mukouda gets to Keels, he finds out that the kingdom has banned further carriage services, and a few soldiers tell him that the king is always trying to start wars without reason. Mukouda feels glad that he decided to leave the dangerous country, but wonders how to escape without a ride. He visits an adventurer's guild and asks for some bodyguards, and the receptionist tells him he'll need to offer 7 gold coins for his difficult request. Mukouda feels surprised by the price, but decides it's better to pay than get trapped in a war-torn country. The receptionist accepts his payment and introduces him to the adventurer Werner, who tells him that his party is ready to leave the next morning. The next day, Mukouda sets out for the kingdom of Venin with Werner's party, and they take a break after traveling some distance. As Mukouda sets up his kitchen to cook, the adventurers feel surprised by his magical storage and foreign equipment. He serves them some fresh sandwiches, which they all find incredibly delicious. Werner feels guilty for getting luxurious food for free, but Mukouda tells him it's not a big deal for him. Seeing his friendly response, Werner nods and promises not to poke his nose into Mukouda's secrets. Afterward, the group runs into some bug monsters on the way. Mukouda jumps in fear as a bunch of bug guts land near him, and a party member informs Werner that there's an angry boar up ahead. Werner's team turns the boar into a bunch of pork chops, and Mukouda stores all its meat in his magic storage. Then, he prepares some special pork soup for them, and the team feels their energy recharging from the hearty food. Mukouda wonders why his food is restoring their energy, since he just cooked a normal soup for them. He uses his appraisal skill to check everyone, and spits out his own soup, shocked that his food actually is giving the adventurers a huge stat buff. Thinking that his otherworldly ingredients could also have hidden side effects, Mukouda decides to keep his food sources secret to avoid being turned into a slave. While everyone chows away, a pair of green eyes silently stalks them in the night. The next day, Mukouda cooks everyone a heavy dish of fried pork, which they instantly devour. However, their joy is short-lived as the legendary Fenrir beast appears behind Mukouda. The giant wolf uses its aura points to threaten Mukouda into giving it food, but loses them all as it starts chomping on them like a starving puppy. Mukouda panics while quickly whipping up more batches of meat to satisfy the hungry dog. After emptying all the stocks of Mukouda's food mart, Fenrir stops eating and tells Mukouda that he's surprised he could satisfy it with such a small amount of food. Fenrir tells the exhausted cook that it wants to form a contract with him, but Mukouda feels worried about befriending such a dangerous creature. He tries to decline Fenrir's Fenrir's offer, but the wolf keeps interrupting him, making it clear that he isn't asking for his consent. Mukouda then asks Werner and his scared teammates if it's a good idea to trust the wolf, and finally accepts Fenrir's offer as they nod their heads. Fenrir then calls over Mukouda and presses its head against him, which creates a glowing light that signs their partnership contract. Once the contact is done, Fenrir proudly sits down to rest and orders Mukouda to cook 3 meals for him every day, leaving him completely stunned. Then, Fenrir asks for a new nickname, and Mukouda gives it a dog name like Bob. However, the wolf feels offended that it's getting treated like a house pet and settles for the name Fel. After settling down from their shock, the group starts traveling again, and everyone wonders how they'll enter the border with the massive beast following them. Werner thinks that the Venan royalty will be all over Mukouda, who feels frustrated that he's attracting so much attention. Later, they all settle down for lunch, and Fenrir demands his portion from Mukouda. He tells the big wolf to get its own meat since he doesn't have any ingredients left, and Fel obediently leaves to hunt. Werner's team is surprised that Mukouda can casually order a legendary beast around, but he reminds them that it's only fair that Fel gets the ingredients he wants to eat. Soon, Fel returns with a powerful B-rank rock bird that Werner's party can only dream of touching. Mukouda asks Fel if he can keep the other parts of the bird, and the wolf tells him he can sell everything else as long as the meat ends up in his belly. With his approval, the team skins the bird, and Mukouda cooks the party's lunch. Fel starts getting impatient that he has to wait, but Mukouda reminds him that his giant portions take the longest to cook. After finishing lunch, everyone starts moving towards the border. Mukouda's teammates wonder how the kingdom will react to Fel, who is rumored to have destroyed an entire country out of rage when they finally reach Venan. Mukouda notices the border guards panicking because of Fel, and Werner leaves to explain their situation to them. However, they all end up getting detained by the border guards. The guard captain asks if Fel truly is under Mukouda's control, who asks his pet to explain that he doesn't mean any harm. Fel tells the captain that he won't attack the Venan kingdom if they don't harm his master. So the captain finally allows everyone to enter. Once they're in, Werner warns Mukouda that the Venan kingdom will investigate him because of his extraordinary companion. Mukouda feels upset to get so much attention, but says that he wants to travel the world for sightseeing anyway. So Werner tells him to get an adventurer or merchant license. Mukouda thinks about becoming a merchant, but a party member reminds him that he needs the Adventurer Guild's services to butcher all the monster Fenrir hunts. However, the mage tells Mukouda that he can just register in both guilds at the same time before they start heading into town. Soon, an annoying servant tries to invite Mukouda to meet his master, and he tries to refuse. However, the servant keeps pestering him to come along, so Fel threatens to obliterate his master's entire bloodline, which finally sends him running away. Werner thinks that the noble family might take action against Mukouda, but the mage reminds him that even the entire Venan army can't defeat Fel. One team member thinks that only a dragon can fight as Fel's equal, and the Fenrir nods, saying that his last fight with a dragon was an even match. After Werner's team finishes glazing Fel, he asks Mukouda to sign their job request completion, and he writes his name on the paper. Werner tells him that they'll go their own ways from here, and they say goodbye to each other. Once they all leave, Mukouda walks to the Merchant Guild, planning to sell the loot from Fel's hunts over there. As he walks into the guild, everyone feels stunned by the oversized husky following him. He asks the attendant for registration, and she explains that the Merchant Guild is independent of any country. Then, she informs Mukouda that the guild has 5 ranks from iron to mithril, before giving him an iron card to set up his portable food stall. Mukouda takes the card and leaves after telling the receptionist that he'll come back to sell his loot to her. Outside, he parks his wolf in a stable while making lunch for both of them. This time, Mukouda puts some steak sauce in Fel's meat, which he enjoys a lot. Then, Mukouda puts a different sauce on the next serving, and Fel gets surprised that the same meat can taste so different with just another sauce. He tries a bunch of different sauces before settling for a nice garlic sauce. After feeding his partner, Mukouda makes a bowl of steak rice for himself and starts to eat, but Fel also gets interested in the rice. Fel enjoys the rice as well, which leaves Mukouda to make some more for his own. He feels grateful that the online delivery skill lets him enjoy good food in a boring world, and heads to bed after dinner. dinner. Then, Mukouda remembers to prepare something before going to sleep. The next day, Mukouda heads back to the Merchant Guild, where he shows the receptionist his loot. She takes a look inside the bag and immediately leaves after seeing its content. As Mukouda wonders if he made a mistake, the receptionist soon returns and takes him to a private room, where the guild master reveals that his salt and pepper are of such high quality that they can sell them to the royal family. The guild master offers to buy all of Mukouda's goods and asks where he got them from, but he awkwardly tries to keep his secret. Noticing Mukouda's hesitation, the guild master stops asking and offers 10 gold coins for his goods. Mukouda is shocked, since he bought the spices for only a few copper coins, but the guild master mistakes his silence for dissatisfaction with the price. He raises his offer to 15 gold coins for everything, and Mukouda finally accepts, realizing he's discovered an infinite money glitch. After getting the gold coins, Mukouda heads for the Adventurers Guild and begins registering himself. The receptionist gives him the lowest G rank card before explaining that he needs to complete one quest per month if he wants to keep his membership. He nods and accepts an easy-looking quest to gather some medicinal flowers for the month. A few days later, Mukouda goes outside the inn and stretches his arms, ready to gather herbs for the quest. Watching him get ready without a care, Fel reminds him that he wants breakfast before they go out. After breakfast, Mukouda goes out to his quest location with Fel, who complains that breakfast wasn't enough to fill him. Mukouda tells him to hunt for meat while he gathers herbs, but Fel doesn't leave before activating a magic shield to protect him from monsters while he's gone. With the legendary dog gone, Mukouda uses his appraisal skill and starts picking the first herb he needs. He soon completes the quest requirements and picks some extra herbs as ingredients for his cooking. Then, Mukouda begins preparing lunch while waiting for Fel to come back. As he takes out his cooking set and orders some ground beef and sauces, Fel returns with another rock bird, saying that he left more monsters in the forest. Mukouda nods and continues cooking his ground beef pasta. Once it's done, Fel feels suspicious of the dangly noodles, but immediately gulps them down after tasting how good they are. Mukouda then gives Fel some cheese to add on top, feeling happy that he can still enjoy all the treats from his old world in this life. After lunch, they head to the forest to get Fel's meat, and Mukouda feels shocked by all the crazy monsters he has hunted. He asks Fel if it's okay to eat half-human monsters like orcs, but Fel explains that it's completely normal for humans to eat them. Mukouda nods before putting all the beasts in his storage and gets on Fel's back, who takes him on a roller coaster ride back home. Once they get back, Mukouda heads into the Adventurers Guild and hands the herbs to the receptionist, who feels surprised that he got so many on his first quest. After he asks her where to sell monster meat, she gets surprised that a weak man like him can hunt, but Mukouda explains that it was actually his guard dog's work. The receptionist nods, then sends Mukouda to the butcher, who gets shocked by the amount of meat he has and takes him to the back of the building. There, the butcher tells Mukouda there are rumors about him and Fel, before Mukouda shocks him with all the powerful beasts he has. The butcher tells him it'll take a while to process all the monsters, so Fel asks for some quick orc meat for the day's dinner. With the orc meat in hand, Mukouda plates some soft pork picadas with delicious meat sauce. Fel quickly digs in, but Mukouda still feels disgusted at the thought of eating orc meat. However, he quickly changes his moral code and inhales the premium pork after getting a taste. The next day, Mukouda goes to the butcher to get his meat. The butcher shows him all the meat before giving him over 200 gold coins for the other monster materials. Mukouda feels surprised, but the butcher reminds him that high-ranked monsters are precious loot. The butcher then gives him a magic crystal from an rank beast, before asking about the rumors that his legendary Fenrir is just a high-ranked great wolf. The butcher then laughs it off, thinking that Fel is the legendary beast for sure with his confidence, and Mukouda leaves with a new excuse to hide his pet's identity. To keep them both safe, Mukouda leaves the town and rests at a midway point outside. There, he asks Fel if he wants to order some gourmet food online, and quickly starts buying the food as Fel creates a waterfall drooling over all the options. Once the food arrives, Fel quickly swallows it all, and Mukouda gives him a final cut of precious Wagyu steak to enjoy. Fel thinks that the small meat is too pathetic, but realizes it tastes better than anything he's had before. Mukouda explains to him that Wagyu cows are specially raised to taste the best, which surprises Fel. He tells Mukouda that in their world, nobody farms animals animals on a large scale since they just eat monster meat. Once Fel finishes dinner, he tells Mukouda that he's feeling strong enough to defeat the ancient dragon he once fought. Mukouda checks his stats and realizes that his food gave Fel a 50% buff, and Fel leaves to use his power for more hunting. Mukouda feels worried to be alone at night, but Fel confidently tells him that his barrier is enough before leaving. After he leaves, Mukouda takes out a soft futon mattress and goes to sleep. Meanwhile, Fel runs through the forest and turns a rock bird into chicken drumsticks. Then, he fries a deer alive and rips through an entire horde of orcs. Before the orc general approaches him, Fel remains confident while facing the bulky monster and slays him with a single strike. But then, a fearsome chimera monster challenges him to steal the prey. Refusing to take the insult, Fel roars and unleashes a lightning spell that obliterates the chimera and takes the monsters back to Mukouda in the morning. Seeing the mountains of meat and a casually decimated chimera around him, Mukouda decides that it's the last time he ordered waju for Fel. The next day, Mukouda asks Fel how he hunts monsters, and the murder puppy tells him that he uses a combination of claws and magic. Mukouda feels excited to use magic, so he checks his stats and finds out that he has magic talent. He asks Fel how to use it, but he just tells him to think about whatever spell he wants to use. Mukouda grabs his head in frustration, realizing that a genius beast like Fel, who goes by intuition, can't teach him anything about the basics. With Fel's words in mind, he imagines a powerful fireball launching out of his hand, but makes himself look like a kid trying to use a kamehameha. Fel notices Mukouda's pathetic attempt and explains that he needs to let magical energy flow through his body first. He lets Mukouda feel his own body for the magic flow, and tells him to practice for the feel, which gets him pumped. However, he immediately gives up after his first real fireball dies out like a cheap candle. Fel tells Mukouda to get some magic practice with real monsters, but he wimps out and refuses to go. So Fel just grabs the cowardly chef to dump into the battlefield. He tosses Mukouda into a camp of goblins and leaves to hunt meat, knowing that his wimpy master won't fight if he's around to babysit him. While running away from the goblins, Mukouda throws a fireball at them, which hits one, but they continue gaining distance on him. Suddenly, Mukouda trips on a stone, and one of the goblins jumps to attack him, but Fel's barrier protects him. Inside the barrier's protection, Mukouda starts lobbing more fireballs at the goblins, and his final attack actually defeats a couple. However, he collapses from exhaustion and passes out, but Fel finally comes up to take him away. Later at night, Mukouda wakes up in a cold sweat but calms down after feeling safe. Fel praises him for his final fireball, but Mukouda starts crying because he threw him into such a dangerous place. Then, Fel notices that Mukouda leveled up. Before he gives him the body of the Goblin King, he asks Mukouda if the body has a magic stone he can sell for more waju meat, but the traumatized chef refuses to give him any more treats for the time being. Mukouda then gets up to prepare a normal dinner, but orders some bakery goods after falling down from exhaustion. Fel feels upset that he's not getting any meat, but he stops complaining after finding the bread delicious. After finishing his portion, Fel asks for more sweets, but Mukouda warns him that he'll get fat if he eats too much. However, the magic wolf confidently tells him that he's immune to poison and illnesses because he got a blessing from the goddess of wind, Fenrir. Mukouda feels jealous that Fel is so overpowered and starts praying to God to give him some buffs just like him. As his desperate screams ring out, a mysterious lady sits at a pond, smiling softly. The next day, Mukouda reaches another town, but the overgrown mutt behind him causes the people to panic. The border guards quickly surround Mukouda, but he explains to them that Fel is actually just his pet great wolf. Fel telepathically reminds Mukouda that he's not a great wolf, while the guards feel suspicious of him. After verifying his guild card, they tell Mukouda that he's allowed to enter their town, warning that if Fel causes trouble, Mukouda could get executed or sold into slavery as punishment. With this information in mind, Mukouda heads into the town and leaves Fel in a stable, while he goes out searching for a world map. He enters a library and gets interested in a magic book, but is surprised that books are expensive because paper is a rare material. Then, he asks the shopkeeper if he has a world map, and the old man gets angry that Mukouda thinks he has top secret FBI level information just lying around. Afterward, Mukouda decides to find a bigger library for his needs, but returns to his room after finding nothing. He goes back to Fel and orders some instant food for the hungry dog, which easily cheers it up. Afterward, Mukouda begins eating his own chicken and rice, but Fel, the legendary pig, starts drooling over that as well. The next day, as Mukouda explores the town, he bumps into some drunk adventurers near a pub. He enters the pub, feeling scared of all the tough adventurers around him, but talks to a party sitting together at a table. The party feels annoyed by Mukouda, but they all warm up to him after he treats them to some drinks. Mukouda asks the adventurers if they can tell him more about their world, revealing that he's from the kingdom of Rieseger. The adventurers nod, saying that the new Rieseger king has been constantly launching wars while trying to expand his territory. They tell Mukouda that the kingdoms of Ermin and Leonhardt are much more stable than their country, and have a bunch of dungeons for adventurers to explore. Mukouda thinks about all the loot he can get, but decides that staying alive is better than risking it for a few trinkets. He feels upset that he doesn't have a map of where to go, and the adventurers quietly tell him that they actually got a secret map. They show him a map with some locations plotted out, and tell Mukouda that he can have it since they have already memorized it. He thinks about their offer and decides that it's fair to pay a gold coin for such precious information. However, after Mukouda buys the map, the adventurers leave the pub and everyone else starts laughing at him. He asks them what's wrong, and they explain that he could have just gotten the public map from the Adventurers Guild for a silver coin instead of getting scammed by strangers. With this map in hand, Mukouda heads out with Fenrir towards the east, looking forward to the coastal areas. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Ninrir feels jealous that Mukouda easily lured her servant Fel with some food and stole him from her. Down on the earth, Fel takes Mukouda to a lake to eat some fish. He shocks the entire lake population into unconsciousness and tells Mukouda to take the fish he likes. Mukouda begins picking the trout, but when Fel tells him to grab some purple variants, he firmly refuses after realizing that they're poisonous. After collecting all the fish, Mukouda grabs some firewood with Fel and orders the ingredients for grilled trout. Once he has everything, Mukouda cleans up a couple of fish and puts them to grill on a skewer, while he preps Fel's special king trout. While preparing all the seasoning, Mukouda keeps reminding Fel to wait until the fish is properly grilled. Once all the different fish dishes are done, both master and servant dig into the food, instantly enjoying it. Mukouda then pulls out some beer to drink with the meat and goes ham on everything. While Mukouda eats, Fel complains that he has already finished, so he gets up to cook some more. Once they're both finally done eating, Fel asks Mukouda if he can cook more fish for him in the future, but he shakes it off and gets up to sleep. However, he runs into a little slime and wonders why the barrier didn't activate. Fel reminds Mukouda that the slime can't hurt him, and he sits down to pet the living jelly. Mukouda feels bad for the baby slime and wonders what to feed it since he's out of food. However, the slime just runs up to some garbage and dissolves it inside its body. Fel tells Mukouda that slimes can eat literally everything, so he rushes and stops the slime before it can devour his entire kitchen. After the slime cleans up all its plastic trash, Mukouda pats its head and it bounces with happiness. Mukouda wonders if the slime is intelligent as it jumps into his arms, confused by how friendly the monster is being with him. But Fel tells him that it has already become his familiar. Mukouda feels shocked that it became his familiar without even signing a contract, but Fel explains that since they both wanted to be together, they formed a partnership without a contract. Fel then asks Mukouda to name the baby slime, so he calls it Sui. The next day, Mukouda tries to create a stone missile, but only succeeds in lobbing a tiny pebble. Fel keeps laughing at his miserable failures, but Mukouda celebrates the fact that he can control another element. While Fel offers to get him some more practical experience, remembering his last disaster with the goblins, Mukouda firmly refuses, but Fel tells him he'll stay mediocre with his weak mindset. Afterward, Mukouda sits down to take a break, and Sui climbs onto his lap. He notices that Sui gained a lot of levels in just a day, and wonders if the plastic garbage from his other world is also a rare food source for the slime. Fel interrupts his thoughts by asking for more food, and Mukouda gets to cooking for everyone. He prepares a dish of marinated orc meat, which Fel starts devouring. Mukouda tells Sui to try eating the food instead of the bowl full this time before enjoying his own portion. After they all finish eating, Mukouda feels happy that he's used to orc meat now. Before checking out Sui's stats, he learns that the little slime only gets temporary buffs from his food, and feels happy while watching it clean his dirty kitchenware for free. He then looks at Fel, the big freeloader, before deciding to celebrate Sui's first real meal by ordering some sweet buns with green tea. He asks Sui if it likes the sweet buns, and it immediately says yes. The next morning, Fel looks out at the sky while Sui wakes Mukouda up. Once he gets up, Fel tells him that he received a message from Ninrir. This news shocks him, but Fel explains that his master is willing to give Mukouda a wind blessing if he sends her some sweets from his world every week. Mukouda feels confused why a powerful being like Ninrir wants food, while Fel informs him that the minor blessing will protect him from status effects and enhance his magical talent. However, as Fel reminds him of the weekly gift, Mukouda wonders how to send it to Ninrir. Fel tells him that he can place the sweets anywhere, and Ninrir will take them if he offers them. Then, after he tells Mukouda to give Ninrir some sweet buns and bread, he wonders why Fel's master is demanding food like a toddler asking for candy. After getting all the sweets Ninrir wants, Mukouda offers them to her, and the items disappear into thin air. After the items disappear, a faint glow appears on Mukouda's body, and he feels happy at receiving the blessing. Meanwhile, Ninrir feels ecstatic as she enjoys the sweet buns, thinking she has truly found happiness. She feels sad after the bun quickly disappears into her belly, but some chocolate milk gets her excited again. Ninrir thinks about saving the rest of the precious sweets she has left, but her greed gets the best of her, and she finishes them all in one go. Back on Earth, Mukouda successfully uses his stone magic after getting Ninrir's blessing. After some training, he feels tired and heads over to his backpack to get some food. He grabs a chocolate bar and sits down with Sui, waiting for Fel to return after a task. Soon, he returns and senses that Mukouda ate something behind his back, so Fel starts throwing a hissy fit to get some chocolate of his own. As he orders some chocolate for Fel, Mukouda suddenly receives a message from Ninrir, who tries to act mysterious, but ends up begging him for the chocolate like a spoiled child. Mukouda finally realizes the reason Ninrir blessed him, and he gives her the chocolate before Fel pushes him to leave for their next location. On the way there, he asks Mukouda about his earth magic progress, and after learning that he's still at a beginner level, Fel decides to take him somewhere special. Soon, Mukouda finds himself at the entrance of a new dungeon and tries to sneak away. However, Fel drags him back, saying that he needs more experience to improve his magic. Mukouda starts crying that the dungeon is too dangerous for him, but Fel reassures him that it only has weak monsters. Mukouda says that the weak monsters are still a big deal for him, but Fel tells him that he can't continue progressing at a snail's pace and reminds him that his barrier will protect him anyway. However, he warns Mukouda that if he gets too deep in the dungeon, his barrier might not work, so he needs to be prepared to protect himself. Realizing there's no way out, Mukouda starts preparing for his dungeon crawl and orders a bunch of different food. He explains to Fel that his food gives different kinds of buffs and begins stuffing his face to prepare for the dungeon. Once Mukouda finishes, Fel thinks he's ready for the fight, but he still feels scared as he heads inside. Fel gets frustrated that he's already shaking like a leaf at the entrance, so he pushes him into the action. Suddenly, a slime pops out, and Mukouda feels guilty for attacking it while having Sui with him. However, Sui mercilessly spits acid and melts down the opposing slime with zero guilt. Then, Mukouda uses his earth bullet to take out another enemy slime and notices that the earth is swallowing up its body. Fel explains that a dungeon is actually like a living creature that absorbs everything that dies inside it, which makes Mukouda even more scared as they head deeper inside. Once they go down a floor, suddenly, some kobolds start chasing Mukouda, who turns around and hits them as they get too close to him. He thinks he has done a great job, but Fel tells him he's still too weak and takes him even deeper to get stronger. After arriving at the lower level, Mukouda gets shocked by an entire army of kobolds and tries to chicken out. Fel refuses to let him weasel out and tosses Mukouda right into the horde with Sui to help. As the angered kobolds charge at him, Mukouda screams like a girl and flinches pathetically, but Fel's barrier protects him while Sui snipes all the monsters. Mukouda finally calms down after realizing he's safe and starts spamming his stone bullet to delete the kobolds. After decimating the entire floor, he notices two final kobolds who turn around to escape, but a creature inside the cave knocks them back. As the kobold king steps out, Mukouda stands there helplessly, before doing what he does best, running away screaming like a little girl. Fel reminds him that he can't defeat the monster by running, so he tries to use his stone bullets, but the kobold king easily shrugs off his attacks. Mukouda tries using more bullets, but the monster just attacks him through them. Then, after Fel warns him that the king can destroy his barrier, Mukouda gets serious and launches a big bullet attack that finally knocks out the monster. However, the kobold king somehow gets back up, and Mukouda runs out of mana to defend himself. As he thinks he's going to turn into wolf poop, the kobold king's attack gets stopped in its tracks by Fel's barrier, who reveals he was just lying to make Mukouda fight seriously. While the monster remains distracted, Sui pops up and melts it into a puddle of goo, and Mukouda passes out from exhaustion as his slime starts glowing. Later, Mukouda wakes up outside the dungeon with Sui nearby. Mukouda asks Sui if it's okay, and he replies that he's fine. He feels relieved at Sui's answer, but feels shocked after realizing that it's actually talking to him. Sui explains that he was able to talk after defeating the kobold king, and Mukouda finds out that he evolved into an adult slime after the fight. He then checks out his own stats, only to get heartbroken that he's even weaker than a 2-week-old slime. Mukouda then asks Sui about Fel, and he tells him that he went outside for a task. As Mukouda wonders if Sui is a special slime who can talk, Fel returns with a bloodied snout and asks for some real food. Mukouda gets mad at him for lying about the barrier, but Fel reminds him that he wouldn't have gotten stronger otherwise, so he starts ordering ingredients. After Mukouda prepares an egg-simmered rockbird gravy with rice, they all enjoy their lunch and sit down to relax. He asks Fel if he has already talked with Sui, and Sui confirms that Fel is a good uncle. The Grand Fenrir Fel gets offended and screams at Sui to use his normal name, which makes him cry. Mukouda comforts Sui in his arms and emotionally blackmails Fel, who gives up his dignity and finally allows Sui to call him uncle. While Fel tries not to cry from shame, Mukouda keeps cuddling his slime companion, feeling happy with his growing party. The next day, as they run through a forest, Fel tells Mukouda that they're going through boss-level Orthos and Griffin territories. Mukouda feels terrified, but Fel reminds him that those monsters can't touch him, but his pathetic master still tries to turn back and escape. However, Fel refuses to budge and tells him they're already inside Orthos territory. Once they head deeper, Fel suddenly stops, and soon, a bunch of brave and stupid Orthos jump out to fight. Mukouda quickly hides in a bush with Sui, while Fel reminds the young monsters how dumb their decision to fight is. The first Orthos rushes to attack Fel, but he takes it out without even touching its body. Finally, the other hooligans realize they're fighting a demon and run back into the forest. Fel calls Mukouda to come out, who asks him how he attacked the Orthos without even touching it. Fel proudly explains that he can use magic to claw at enemies even from a distance, and Sui asks Mukouda if he can use this skill too. He reminds him that he doesn't have claws like Fel, but starts praising Sui for having an even better acid spray, while Fel watches unamused that the slime stole his glory. Later at night, as Mukouda gathers some water in a bucket, he gets startled by a sound. Fel tells him that he's acting scared with no reason, since the Orthos won't appear to harass them again. He then asks Mukouda for dinner, who gets ready to start cooking, but feels horrified remembering that it'll still take them 3 weeks to get out of these wretched forests. Mukouda then takes out some black serpent meat and starts making a sweet and spicy sauce for it. Once Mukouda's done preparing the meat, he forces himself to eat it, thinking it's chicken, but Fel steals it all for himself. Left with nothing for himself, Mukouda cooks up another batch for his hungry dog and slime, but after they both finish, all he gets for himself is a small serving left for a sandwich. The next day, Fel is running through the forest, but stops after seeing some rare healing mushrooms, explaining that they can even heal broken bones. Mukouda gets off to pick all the mushrooms and lets Sui eat some of them. As he finishes filling up a full basket, Mukouda feels shocked when Sui starts glowing. He quickly checks on his baby, but Sui tells him he's fine, so Mukouda checks his stats with appraisal. He learns about Sui's new potion creation skill, and Fel tells him that slimes can get the properties of the magic materials they eat. Mukouda feels excited to see the healing potion factory in action, and Sui tries his best to create his first potion. As some liquid starts dripping out from Sui's arm, Mukouda rushes to collect it in a bottle and feels surprised that it's a high-quality potion that can heal near-death injuries. He asks Sui if he can make lower-quality potions as well, and Sui confirms that he can also make low and medium-quality potions for smaller injuries. Seeing the healing potion created so easily, Fel feels surprised by Sui's unique skill and praises him for his intelligence. Sui feels happy with all the attention he's getting and jumps into Mukouda's hands, who pampers him even more. A few days later, Mukouda and Fel stop in the Griffin territory. As the first Griffin appears, Mukouda gets ready for another fight, but the monster asks to have a duel with Fel to prove its strength to its people. Fel agrees and warns the Griffin that he won't hold back, but Mukouda telepathically tells him not to take the monster's life. With both of them ready, Fel charges at the Griffin, which flies up and shoots a storm of feather arrows at him. Fel avoids the arrows, but loses sight of the Griffin in the dust, so the bird uses this to launch a surprise attack. Mukouda feels lost since the fighting is happening in the dust, but Fel finally uses a tornado spell to sweep up the Griffin. As the tornado disappears, the Griffin falls from the sky, and Mukouda gets angry at Fel for going too far. However, the Griffin feels proud that it fought a serious match against the legendary Fenrir before closing its eyes. Mukouda quickly calls over Sui and uses a powerful healing potion on the Griffin, which gets up, feeling embarrassed that it lost so easily. However, Mukouda shows that it actually got Fel with a slight injury, and Fel awkwardly admits that he did get hurt. At this news, the Griffin gets excited and roars to call all its tribe, who fly over to their location. The Griffin heads to the lead spot and thanks Fel for helping him get recognized as a leader of his pack. He gives Mukouda a feather to keep so he can safely pass through the Griffin territory in the future, before flying away with its tribe. Afterward, Fel demands a big dinner because he used so much strength, so Mukouda decides to treat him with all the meat they have left. He preps some orc meat with egg batter and fries it in oil, and serves the finished dish to his party. Then, Mukouda sits down for his own meal and tries to forget that he's about to eat a half-human. Meanwhile, Fel and Sui finish their portions and ask for seconds, but then Fel reminds Mukouda to give his sweet gifts to Ninrir. Mukouda feels anxious that he totally forgot, and orders some more sweets before Ninrir gets upset and turns his wind blessing into a curse. The next morning, Fel finally makes it out of the forest with Mukouda, who feels excited to enter the kingdom of Leonhardt. He tells Fel that they're running out of meat, and the oversized meat processor starts running anxiously to hunt more monsters as soon as possible. However, they encounter a caravan getting attacked by some bandits, so Mukouda asks Fel to save them in exchange for a special dinner. Up ahead, the bandits quickly overpower the caravan guards, but Fel arrives at the scene and roars to intimidate them before ordering the bandits to leave. Facing the legendary beast, the bandits drop their weapons and get arrested. While the caravan leader Lambert thanks Mukouda for his help, Mukouda asks him where he was headed, and after learning that they're going to a Leonhardt city called Kerlina, he asks to tag along with them. Once they all start walking towards the city, Mukouda hears the guards whisper about his Fenrir and learns that they use a magic messaging ability to communicate between cities. Mukouda sighs, hoping that he remains safe from all the greedy monsters after his precious dog. After a little while, the caravan stops to rest, and Fel reminds Mukouda that he promised him a feast. Mukouda thinks about what to cook since he doesn't have much meat, so he decides to make some perfect nuggets with all the remaining chunks. As Mukouda's party indulges itself, the adventurers smell their amazing food and walks over to check it out. Noticing their pitiful stares, Mukouda gives the beggars some food as well, and he quickly runs out of all his meat before getting to eat even a single piece. As thanks for the good food, the adventurers offer to guard their group while Mukouda's party sleeps, and he happily accepts their offer. Nearby, the bandits get angry at the guards for being detained, but Mukouda reminds them that Fel will turn them into beef jerky if they try anything funny. The next day, the caravan reaches the city of Kerlina, where they hand over the bandits to the police. The caravan guards then decide to head over to the Adventurers Guild, and Mukouda goes with them as Lambert heads back to his shop. However, when Mukouda actually visits visits the guild, he learns that his license was revoked because he was inactive for over a month, as the receptionist explains that he needs to keep doing quests to retain his membership. Mukouda gives her his tag to re-register and tells her to register Sui as his familiar. She gets weirded out by the slime, and everyone else starts laughing at Mukouda. After getting registered, he heads to the shop to sell his meat, and the adventurers ask if they can look at the rare monsters Fel hunted. Soon, they stare at the mountain of dangerous beasts stacked up like a pile of trash, and quickly accept that Fel really is a real Fenrir. Meanwhile, the butcher feels excited to work on such high-quality materials. Out of curiosity, Mukouda asks him if he can butcher his meat elsewhere, and learns that other butchers can cheat him or carelessly ruin the monster loot. As the butcher gets to work, Mukouda feels excited to try more exotic meat, while the adventurers realize that they just ate literal gold from him last night. They all apologize for eating Mukouda's precious meat, but he tells them that he doesn't mind at all. As thanks, Captain Lars tells Mukouda to ask him for any help since he's a well-known guy in the city. Afterward, Mukouda heads to an inn to sleep, but feels bad that he has to keep doing quests to sell his meat at the guild. As he closes his eyes to rest, Fenrir starts telepathically crying that he hasn't given her any attention after coming to the city. So Mukouda gets up to give her a gift. He orders some extra special stuff this time, and Fenrir accepts them like an excited child, making him doubt her goddess status before he goes to sleep. The next morning, Mukouda looks at a guild billboard for some quests, and Fel tells him to hunt some goblins to increase his rank quickly. Mukouda reminds him that he still has PTSD from his last goblin encounter, and asks Fel why he's in such a rush to rank up and visit the ocean. Fel shamelessly tells him that he just wants good seafood, and Mukouda feels terrified of all the krakens and serpents lurking in the ocean. However, Fel insists that they go because he loved the fish they ate last time, and tries to get Sui to support him. Mukouda tries to convince Sui not to go, but it says that it wants to melt more monsters, forcing him to accept his party's decision. Once they head out to hunt, Sui spots a group of 3 goblins and turns them into fertilizer. Mukouda feels disgusted while cutting off goblin ears for proof, but then another bunch of them appear from behind. Sui sprays them with acid again and melts through the entire pack like butter. While Mukouda's knees tremble with fear, Sui asks him if he can fight more goblins, so Fel drags him away before he can refuse. Soon, the slime machine gun finishes, wiping out the local goblin population, and Fel makes Mukouda collect all their ears to get more adventurer points. Mukouda feels worried that the mountain of goblin corpses might attract beasts to the city or create another dungeon, and asks Fel to clean them all. He suggests burning the bodies, but Mukouda refuses to risk setting the entire forest on fire, so Fel then asks Sui to melt them all. Sui asks for Mukouda's permission before enlarging into a giant form, and Mukouda checks his stats and learns that he got another skill. Sui explains that he can now change his size at will, before melting his big form away and creating dozens of new slimes, which get to work and eat up all the goblins. Mukouda asks Fel if this is normal, but even the old Fenrir feels surprised by Sui's mysterious powers. After the slimes finish cleaning up, Mukouda realizes that Sui's powers might be even more valuable than his own grocery skill. Afterward, Mukouda orders some bread while they rest, and he wonders if it's okay to finish ranking up in just one day instead of the whole month. Once he gets back to the guild, Mukouda feels trapped as the guild members panic over his mountains of goblin ears. The receptionist calls him over to meet her guild master with his party, and Mukouda gets ready for another stressful meeting. After Mukouda enters the guild master's room, the leader, Willem, asks him about the goblins. Mukouda tells him that he encountered a big tribe of them, and Willem explains that the city was having trouble with all the goblins that had popped up, so he'll reward Mukouda for taking care of them all. Mukouda feels relieved that he's not getting investigated, while the guild master praises Fenrir's power for defeating the goblins. However, Sui reminds Willem that he did all the hard work, and the guild master feels surprised that Mukouda has another unique friend. Then, he tells Mukouda that the royal family has allowed him to live freely in their kingdom, but asks for Fel's help if they face an emergency. While Mukouda celebrates his freedom, Willem asks him about his adventurer rank promotions. He tells him that he wants to become F rank, but Willem offers to raise him directly to C rank if he can do some tasks for him. Mukouda realizes that a guild master must have some serious missions and tries to refuse, but Willem explains that Fel can complete these difficult requests on his own. As Fel agrees, Willem takes out some high-ranking quests, feeling excited to have some of the town's old problems solved. Mukouda then asks Willem to sell some rare beasts, but he tells him that he doesn't have enough money to purchase the precious Chimera and Orthos. Disappointed, Mukouda stores away the two terrors while the butcher works on the other special monsters. Learning that they're all S-ranked monsters, Mukouda feels a bit scared of his own pet Fel, and Sui says that it wants to become just like its uncle. As Mukouda prepares to head home, Willem tells him to get his C-rank card the next day. Once he gets back, Mukouda starts prepping some rockbird for dinner and peels the meat into smaller strips with Sui. After preparing the meat, Mukouda adds his veggies and seasonings and begins enjoying the meal with his friends. After dinner, Fel tries resting in his stable, but feels suffocated, so Mukouda gives him a mattress to lie on before leaving to sleep. The next morning, Mukouda gets his guild card from Willem and learns that he only needs to do a quest every 6 months from now on. Then, Willem shows him a huge pile of cash and explains that all the rare monsters he hunted sold for almost 2,000 gold coins. Mukouda feels happy to be rich, but then realizes he's become a prime target for bandits. After making the payment, Willem gives Mukouda his special quests to hunt a metal lizard and a pack of red-horned bulls, saying that they need the lizard taken care of first. Mukouda remembers that Fel has already hunted a metal lizard, realizing that he underestimated how dangerous these beasts were because Fel plucked them like weeds. Then, Willem explains that the red-horned bulls have started a colony near adventurer training grounds, and Fel feels excited to try their delicious beef. Mukouda also starts getting dirty thoughts about all the nasty things he could do to the bull's tender meat, and Willem feels creeped out by his disturbing expression. Afterward, Mukouda heads to Lambert's shop to buy a new carry bag for Sui. In that moment, Sui jumps into a bag he likes. Then, he also buys an expensive knife belt and purse, and grabs some leather shoes to replace his old ones. Lambert calculates the final price, but tells Mukouda that he can have the items for free since he saved his life. Then, he asks him if he has some expensive black serpent skin left, but Mukouda guiltily explains that he already sold it all to the guild. Lambert sighs, recalling the beautiful red serpent skin the guild recently bought, and Mukouda refrains from telling him that he was the one who sold it too. As Mukouda later prepares to leave, Lambert asks him to sell any serpent skins to him in the future, and he accepts his request. Fel joins Mukouda as he walks back to the inn and demands to eat some more nuggets with Sui before they go lizard hunting. Once they get back, Mukouda gets to cooking and douses the meat in sauce before preparing to double fry it. After the first batch gets done, Mukouda's two pets quickly finish it and ask for more, and he happily prepares more servings. Once he's done feeding his pets, Mukouda sits down to have some food for himself and enjoys the full moon in the sky while having his feast. The next day, Fel reaches the metal lizard's location and asks Mukouda to check on his map. Once he gets confirmation, Fel starts running to sniff out the lizard's nest, and soon finds a cave near a forest. Mukouda asks him if he can stay outside while he goes in to hunt, but Fel just takes him inside anyway. Deep within the cave, Fel spots the metal lizard chomping away at some metal. Mukouda notices that the lizard is glowing for some reason and finds out that it's actually evolved to get a mithril skin. Fel explains that since the lizard has mithril armor, magic attacks will be less effective against it. Mukouda thinks that this will cause trouble for Fel, but the overpowered wolf just fries the lizard with a powerful lightning spell. Mukouda pays his respects to the fallen soul and stores it in his bag, and decides to pick some mithril ore while he's in the cave. He thinks about creating some magic armor with the material, but Fel gets angry and reminds him that his barrier is far stronger than some metal. Then, he grabs Mukouda and sprints off, ready to go hunt the bull colony for delicious beef. Once they reach the area, Mukouda decides to sit it out and let Fel hunt the monsters. Fel agrees and leaves him behind, but Sui pops out of its bag, leaving his master all alone. Mukouda takes a peek at the scene, but before he can even react, a huge wind blows out, clearing to reveal the bull corpses whose souls ascended to heaven. Sui comes back to Mukouda to proudly reveal that he cleaned up the monsters, while Mukouda wonders if he can even fit so much meat in his bag. As he struggles to shove the cows into his storage space, Sui creates his dozen clones and helps him move the bodies. Once the meat is stored away, Mukouda starts preparing preparing some orc and rockbird sandwiches for lunch. As they start eating, Sui gets curious about the soda Mukouda is drinking. He gives some of it to Sui, and it instantly empties the whole bowl, while Fel comes over to check it out. After enjoying an entire bottle, the big wolf sits down to rest and starts burping like an old engine. Later, Mukouda returns with the mithril lizard to the guild, and Willem tells him that this discovery is so serious, he'll have to report it to the king. The butcher explains that metal lizards are rare creatures, but in order for one to evolve into a mithril lizard, it must have found a new mithril ore vein. He reveals that mithril ore can only be mined at 3 locations in the world, so they have just discovered a new gold mine. Willem tells Mukouda that he'll sell the lizard to the king along with the mountain's location, but he'll get him a good reward for it. Learning that he'll get 5,000 gold coins as compensation, Mukouda starts feeling scared of his own money, while the butcher feels jealous that he's suffering from success. However, Willem asks Mukouda for some time to prepare the big payment and tells him to take care of the Red Bulls in the meantime. Before he can even finish speaking, Mukouda unloads the entire herd into the room, leaving the guild master truly speechless. Afterward, Mukouda feels worried that he'll get into trouble for his secret discovery, but Fel impatiently asks him for dinner. The thought of premium beef cheers Mukouda up, and he gets ready to prepare them some good steaks. He cuts up the meat into big portions and prepares his pan for grilling. Once the pan is ready, Mukouda adds the spices and cooks up the meat before wrapping it up in foil to set. Fel and Sui feel excited as they wait, and when the steak is finally ready, they all ascend to heaven from the exquisite flavor. After finishing his portion, Fel asks Mukouda for his special treat, so he drizzles some garlic sauce all over his next serving. Later, the two beasts rest while Mukouda cleans the dishes, and Fel tells him that he can't go back to raw meat after getting hooked on his cooking. As Sui also praises his master, Mukouda feels happy to have these companions and feels determined to continue treating them with delicious cuisine. After finishing the dishes, Mukouda heads to his room to give Ninrir her gifts before going to sleep. He orders some sweets from his store, but Ninrir complains that she wants even more. She feels excited after Mukouda orders some deluxe cakes and puddings for her, but suddenly, some other goddesses interrupt her and greet him on the call. The other 3 girls get angry at Ninmir for hogging all the good stuff, but she claims that she's just getting compensation for giving him a blessing. The biggest of the 3, the goddess of earth Kisharl, tells Mukouda that a blessing can only enhance his power if he uses the corresponding element magic. Along with her, the goddess of fire Agni offers to boost his fire magic as well, and Mukouda feels stuffed under all of their offers. Ninrir tries to protect him from the others by reminding them that they've been giving out too many major blessings already. However, the 2 just settle for giving him minor blessings, and Mukouda feels like he can't refuse them even if he wanted to. Mukouda asks them if it's normal for one person to gain the blessings of multiple goddesses, and they realize nobody else in history got it. However, Agni doesn't care, and she blesses Mukouda without his consent, and Kisharl does the same. Ninrir feels upset that she has to share her human bakery, but the 3rd goddess quietly asks her if she's not going to get anything. Ninrir and the others grow quiet after she speaks, and she introduces herself as Rusalka, the goddess of water. Rusalka feels upset that she can't get Mukouda's sweets because he doesn't have any water magic and starts crying. Everyone panics to calm her down, and the girls tell Mukouda he should help. While he feels confused about what to do, Sui asks him if he can help. This gives Mukouda the idea to have Sui blessed by Rusalka, and she agrees to give him a major water blessing. Once all the girls calm down, Mukouda sends all of them a big box of treats as a gift. Before lying down to check his stats, he decides to keep his blessings a secret, while Sui feels confused, so Mukouda tells him to test out the blessings the next morning. The next day, Mukouda uses his fireball and stone bullet spells, feeling happy to see them much stronger than before. Then, Sui creates a big ball of water and completely obliterates a giant tree with it, before slicing down another 2. Mukouda feels scared of Sui's power and warns it never to use its powers on people. While Mukouda goes back to training with his new power, Fel goes out to hunt some more beasts. When he later returns, Fel sees that Mukouda built a new house for them to sleep in with some earth magic. However, he puts down a black serpent, demanding dinner before they can go in to rest. The next day, Fel asks Mukouda if he wants to hunt some more meat. He refuses, saying that they should sell the serpent skin to Lambert while while they collect the previous meat from the Adventurers Guild. Once they go back to town, the butcher hands over the finished bull meat along with the money, saying that it will still take them some time to process the mithril lizard. Mukouda nods and gives him the black serpent to process the meat and skin. Before returning to make lunch, he takes out a meat grinder to make some mincemeat, and Sui helps him crank the manual machine to finish the work in seconds. Once the meat is ready, Mukouda sautés some onions and prepares the meat in an egg and bread batter. Then, he turns the beef into patties and puts them on a grill, and the group soon stuffs their faces with some good food. Once they're done eating, Mukouda tries washing himself, but realizes that the inn's soap is useless. He decides to order some premium soaps and shampoos from his online mart to use and sell to Lambert. Once the soap arrives, he visits Lambert's shop and starts by selling the serpent skin. Before asking him if he can sell his soaps as a merchant, Lambert looks at the soap and admires it for its high quality. But when Mukouda introduces the rest of the magical hair and skin products as well, he starts thinking that God sent him a miracle from heaven. Lambert explains to Mukouda that his wedding anniversary is next week, so he got the perfect gift to give his wife, who is tired of all his bags and purses. As Mukouda learns that Lambert's wife loves taking baths, he starts wanting a bathtub for himself and asks him if he sells any. Lambert shows him a luxurious tub, but explains that because bathtubs are so expensive to make, he'll need a few hundred gold coins to pay a specialized tub shop. With all the money from monster loot, Mukouda decides it's worth it to pay so much, and Lambert offers to introduce him to a tub maker before he leaves. The next day, Mukouda goes back to Lambert to check on him and meets his enthusiastic wife at the door. She introduces herself as Mary before explaining that because of Mukouda's shampoos, her husband actually looked like he had taken a shower for the first time in years. She then praises Mukouda for his magical conditioners that fixed her dry hair, and Lambert asks him if he can sell his soaps in his store. Lambert says that he's a bit skeptical about selling soaps as a leather merchant, but his wife tells him that the rare soaps will be an instant success. She asks Mukouda to sell his goods to Lambert's store, and he quickly accepts, saying he doesn't know other merchants anyway. After finishing his goods delivery, Mukouda heads back to Fel and Sui, and Fel asks him if they can go hunting again. However, Mukouda refuses, explaining that the guild master arrived in town to see him before leaving the bored wolf to rot alone. Inside the guild, Mukouda enters the guild master's room and immediately screams in shock at the mountains of gold piled up. With the 6,000 gold coins in hand, Mukouda thinks he's going to get the best bathtub of all time, but a guild secretary interrupts to inform Willem that some adventurers got critically wounded by wyverns. As they rush down to check, the secretary explains that the party was attacked on the city outskirts. Once they reach the ground floor, they see the wounded adventurers, and Willem asks the surrounding people for healing potions. Mukouda quickly gives him some of Sui's potions, and they instantly restore the adventurers' health like senzu beans. Mukouda tries to act innocent as Willem feels suspicious of his medicine, but he orders his staff to take the adventurers to a doctor. Then, after Willem announces an emergency quest to hunt down the rogue wyverns, Mukouda realizes that he also has to participate as a C rank before anyone can leave the guild, though Fel arrives and declares that he'll take care of all the monsters himself. Mukouda tries to stop him, but Fel feels too bored to sit around and decides that he wants to eat wyvern meat for lunch. Seeing Fel ready to fight, Willem offers to help, but he tells him that he'll just get in his way. With the city's fate in Fel's hands, Mukouda is left helpless to head out with him. Once they reach the wyvern area, Fel stops to look at the flying beasts and says that he'll teach Sui how to hunt the birds. As the wyverns swoop down to attack, Fel takes Sui on his back and rushes towards them, and tells him to aim for their heads and necks to take them down. Sui takes a shot and hits a wyvern, but misses its head. The injured creature falls down screaming in pain, and Fel removes his head like a plastic puzzle piece. With his guns warmed up, Sui starts launching artillery missiles at the flying beasts, while Mukouda hides behind a rock like a complete wimp, watching the two of them rip the wyvern flock apart. Mukouda feels heartbroken that his cute Sui is getting corrupted by the violent Fel. Suddenly, a wyvern sneaks up behind him, and he screams like a little boy. When it strikes him with its tail, Fel's barrier activates and blocks the attack. However, Sui and Fel arrive just in time to turn the wyvern into a headless chicken. After they finish off off the flock, Fel and Sui ask for lunch, and Mukouda pulls out some leftover beef patties. He coats them in some egg batter and fries them up before enjoying the delicious meat with his cold-blooded friends, while Mukouda enjoys an outdoor barbecue. The guild secretary feels worried that he'd get hurt by the monsters. However, Willem remains confident that he'll return just fine with the murder puppy Fel by his side. It takes a while for Mukouda's group to return, so the guild members get worried, but he finally returns at night. Willem anxiously asks him how the mission went, and Mukouda informs him that they exterminated all the wyverns in the sky. Soon, the entire guild erupts into cheers, and Willem explains that the wyverns had been terrorizing them all for quite a while. He tells Mukouda that the guild thought they were taking too long because they got hurt, while he feels guilty that he was just stuffing his face with burgers as they waited. However, Fel just tells Willem they were eating the wyverns, exposing their secret with zero shame. Mukouda later tells Willem that he preserved the wyverns' bodies by chopping their heads off, leaving him shocked that they can carefully handle such dangerous beasts. Willem tells him that he can butcher the meat for free, but only has enough money to pay for half of the monsters. But Mukouda doesn't mind. Once he hands over the meat, he returns to the inn to rest and remembers to send sweets to the goddesses who blessed him. Just then, he gets a message from Agni complaining about her sweets, but Ninrir secretly tells him to give her a bigger share of sweets. As Mukouda feels more frustrated, Kisharl also secretly asks him for hair care products, while Ruzalka requests some meat. Mukouda reminds all three of them that the others will find out about their secret messages when he sends the gifts anyway. As the three feel embarrassed, Agni gets furious that they contacted him privately, while Mukouda wishes he could end it all. The next day, Mukouda walks with Fel to the bathtub store. As he enters the large building, he instantly gets charmed by all the luxurious baths around him. While the shopkeeper shows him around all the different goods, Mukouda settles for a plain green tub and asks him to get it ready. The shopkeeper feels surprised that he has already decided and asks if he has a monthly payment plan for the hundreds of gold coins. Mukouda realizes that he doesn't look like he can afford such a huge amount up front and gives the owner a huge bag of gold. The shopkeeper asks him if he needs a delivery service for the tub, but Mukouda just uses his storage space and happily leaves the store with Fel. As they walk through the city, Mukouda asks Fel to leave the town since everyone started treating them differently after the wyvern hunt. He goes out to a nice forest to start setting up the tub, while Fel leaves to go hunt. After Fel leaves, Mukouda creates a stone wall for privacy and puts the tub inside, while Sui fills it up with water. Then, he warms up the water with his fireball before adding some special bath salts to it. Mukouda finally jumps into the cozy tub and washes off the months of dirt and grime on him, and finishes off the bath with a bottle of milk. After getting out of the bath, Mukouda starts preparing the wyvern meat for lunch. He chops some onions, slices the meat, and then prepares a sauce to soak it in. Once the meat is cooked, he pours the gravy on some rice and finishes the dish with some garnish. However, since Fel still hasn't returned, he decides to make some more food while he waits. Mukouda orders some veggies and bottles and prepares the rest of the meat in a nice stew. As he waits for the food to cook, Sui calls out that Fel has arrived, but Mukouda gets jump scared by a dinosaur corpse. Fel proudly tells him that because he wasn't satisfied with just some wyverns, he decided to hunt an earth dragon as well. Mukouda tries to ignore his insane feat, but starts screaming in panic anyway, and Fel wonders why he's so scared. Mukouda asks him what he's supposed to do with a real dragon, reminding him that it's so rare nobody will even buy it from him. Fel asks him if he can just get the meat from the dragon before noticing the aroma of the delicious wyvern food before Fel can eat, though Mukouda tells him that he's dirty from the fight and orders him to take a bath. Fel starts coping that he always keeps himself clean, but Mukouda refuses to let him eat before cleaning up. To help him bathe, Mukouda orders some dog shampoo from his store. Fel feels offended that he's getting treated like a pet, but Mukouda starts grooming him like a dog anyway. Once he brushes Fel's fur, he splashes him with water, and Fel feels annoyed by the little splashes. He asks Mukouda to just use Sui's water, but he explains that Sui can't make warm water for a bath. However, as he watches Sui play in the water, Mukouda gets the idea to mold his slimy body into water pipes. With the water pipe, he gives the embarrassed Fel a full dog wash. After the bath, Mukouda starts rubbing Fel's fur with a shampoo, and he starts to enjoy the special treatment. moment. Mukouda tells Fel that he has to clean his face too, and he reluctantly accepts it to look like the best doggy ever. Once the bath is over, Fel shakes his fur dry and gives Mukouda a second bath. Mukouda then uses his fire and wind magic to dry both of them up, and Fel starts feeling proud of looking so handsome. However, even while gloating, Fel asks about dinner, so Mukouda takes out the wyvern dish he prepared. He pours out the gravy onto rice bowls, which makes Fel suspicious, but he forgets it and starts chomping down after tasting how good it is. Seeing Fel enjoy himself, Mukouda starts eating his own portion, but Fel asks him about the other pot he's cooking. Mukouda explains that the other pot needs some time to taste best, and they head back to town after finishing dinner. Once they get back, Mukouda tries selling the dragon to the guild, but Willem immediately refuses, saying they can't even afford a single claw from the legendary beast. Fel asks him to just butcher the meat, but Mukouda reminds him that they can't just ignore the other parts. Willem stops to think and tells him that the guild master from Dolan City might be able to process the dragon for him. After learning that Dolan is near the sea, Fel gets excited to enjoy all the ocean monsters, and Mukouda thinks he can get the dragon processed on their way there. The two guild members laugh at how casually he's taking a dragon beast and send Mukouda on his way. Before leaving Corlina, Mukouda greets all his friends, and Willem gives him a map for his journey. With all his preparations done, Mukouda's party heads out to explore new horizons. Sometime later, in a dense forest, some ferocious giant spiders surround an unsuspecting little rabbit. As they get closer, one of the spiders lunges to snatch the rabbit for lunch, but a majestic Fel saves the day. After electrocuting the entire spider colony, Fel asks Mukouda if there are any furry-legged monsters left. Mukouda confirms that all the spiders are gone, but wonders what to do with their hairy corpses. Seeing him upset, Fel reveals that the inner parts of the spiders are actually very delicious. Meanwhile, the baby slime Sui pops out of Mukouda's bag, upset that Fel erased the spiders before it could have some fun with them. As Mukouda starts comforting his baby, Fel gets jealous and points out that he's always doting on Sui. Offended, Mukouda reminds the overgrown husky that he also begs him for treats like a whiny dog. At the mention of snacks, Fel gets excited and shamelessly asks Mukouda to make some more for him. Mukouda is tired of his antics, but he's got no choice but to satisfy his living meat processor. Before cooking, Mukouda puts away all of the spider corpses into his bottomless storage. Once the spiders are stored, he takes out all of the meat he has. Seeing that he doesn't have too many portions of the same meat, Mukouda decides to make a dish called gyoza. Both Fel and Sui are interested in the dish, but Mukouda says that it'll be a surprise. As Sui bounces around in excitement, Mukouda opens up his online grocery store to order some spices. Seeing the store, Fel asks for some premium wagyu, but Mukouda reminds him that he's only getting spices for their current dish. After ordering all the ingredients, Mukouda chops up the veggies and adds the sauce and spices to the meat. Once the sauces are in, he puts in the veggies and starts mixing them around with the meat. Finally, he makes some dumpling wraps with all the meat filling and hands them to Sui to prepare. Together, the master slime duo uses up the entire filling pot to fill 2 dishes with their dumplings. Mukouda takes the dumplings and starts cooking them on medium heat before adding the final bits of flour, salt, and sauce. Once it's done cooking, he flips the pan upside down and reveals the thoroughly seasoned gyoza dumplings. Mukouda proudly sets down the dish and begins explaining his cooking process, but Fel starts devouring it before he can finish a sentence. After just one bite, Fel turns from a savage animal into a master food critic, praising all its intricate flavors and textures. While Fel chomps away, Sui keeps dissolving all the dumplings in its slimy acid. Both monsters finish a batch in less than a minute, so Mukouda starts cooking up another batch. However, none of them notice as a tiny dragon watches their special dinner from a tree. Once the 2 monsters are done stuffing their mouths, Mukouda finally gets some time to relax and eat his own meal. He eats the gyoza from a small plate, enjoying the scraps his hungry companions leave for him. Unfortunately, Mukouda gets interrupted by a tiny dragon latching onto his face. Seeing the magic lizard innocently staring at his face, Mukouda takes some time to process his feelings before screaming out in horror. He asks Fel about the creature, and Fel reveals that it's a very rare pixie dragon. Mukouda is surprised that he actually encountered a mythical creature, and wonders if the flying lizard wants some of his food. As he moves his chopsticks around, the dragon follows the food, so so Mukouda gives it a dumpling to eat. The little creature hugs the entire dumpling with its tiny body and takes a bite, instantly falling in love with the delicious cooking. Soon, the dragon finishes the whole dumpling and begs Mukouda for more. He quickly gives the rest of his own food to eat, which the dragon happily rushes to. As Mukouda thinks the dragon is pretty cute, Fel warns him not to be fooled by its tiny body because it can use any type of magic and annihilate most of its enemies in battle. Nearby, the dragon finishes its remaining meal and suddenly clings to Mukouda's face again. The dragon's body quickly glows before Mukouda yanks it off his face. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head demanding more delicious food, which leaves Mukouda confused. Fel tells him that the pixie dragon has decided to join their party and become his familiar, allowing it to communicate with everyone via telepathy. Mukouda's jaw drops as he realizes he's gonna go bankrupt with another mouth to feed, while Sui is excited to get another friend. Taking a look at Sui, the pixie dragon praises it for its surprising power. Before they can get too chummy, Mukouda stops them, pointing out that he didn't even consent to accepting the dragon as his familiar. He asks the pixie dragon if it really thinks it's worth following him around just for some food, but the tiny dragon thinks it's totally worth it. Fel quickly accepts it into the team, saying that a few decades of helping a puny human is nothing to ancient beasts like them. As the dragon agrees with Fel, Mukouda is stunned that all of the pretentious legendary beasts in this world are just a bunch of shameless gluttons. Then, the dragon reminds Mukouda that it needs a name as his new partner, so he calls it Dora-chan. After hearing his new name, Dora starts complaining that a powerful creature like him shouldn't have such a cute name, but Mukouda refuses to change his mind. As he checks Dora's stats, Mukouda points out that the system has already accepted his name, so he can't change it. In that moment, he also realizes that Dora is 116 years old. Remembering how Mukouda tried to give him some fluffy dog names when they first met, Fel tells Dora to just accept his fate. Meanwhile, Sui happily tells the group that he loves his name, and Mukouda thinks his three misfits will get along just fine. A few days later, Mukouda's party enters the city of Krail. As he registers Dora as his new familiar at the Adventurers Guild, the attendant informs him that the guild master has a special request. While Mukouda wonders why his help is needed, the guild master, called Rodolfo, appears and starts rambling about his pixie dragon. Seeing Mukouda's confusion, Rodolfo explains that he has a forest exploration quest for him. In a private room, Rodolfo reveals that the forest monsters are acting unusually aggressively, so Mukouda suggests that they just avoid the forests for now. This angers the dwarven leader, who points out that their town depends on the silk obtained from the forest monsters to make their textiles. Mukouda understands that the town is in a tough spot, but he feels too scared to fight dangerous monsters. However, Dora tells him that the forest is just filled with pitiful spiders and centipedes, which reminds Mukouda of his recent experience. Meanwhile, Rodolfo is confused since he can't hear telepathic conversation between the two partners. Fel also confirms that he took out all the spiders, so Mukouda shows him the venom tarantula corpses from his back. The sight of the spiders almost gives Rodolfo a heart attack, since they're the monsters he was talking about, and he wonders why Mukouda has them. He sheepishly points to Fel, who says that he just punished the spiders for bad behavior. Mukouda thinks he's in trouble for stealing the town's source of income, but Rodolfo reveals that the forest is actually overpopulated with these spiders, so he just solved their problem, happy that his quest is complete. Rodolfo tells Mukouda that he can sell the spider materials for some good money and cook the rest of their meat in delicious ways. Mukouda's face sinks as Fel and Dora drool at the thought of boiled spider meat, but he gives in once Sui asks to try the spiders. He asks Rodolfo to sell the materials and process the meat, and the dwarf quickly agrees to his request. While the guild processes their spiders, Mukouda and the other explore the town's clothes market. Mukouda takes a look at some soft fabric, falling in love with the material's quality. However, he gets shocked by the insane price of 1 gold, but realizes that the material is probably worth the cost. Soon enough, the shopkeeper also appears and tells Mukouda that the other towns don't sell this fabric for so cheaply. This gives Mukouda the motivation to buy the golden drip, and he stocks up on clothes before returning to the guild. Rodolfo shows him all the processed meat, explaining that he left the external shells on the legs since the meat loses its taste if it's exposed too long. Mukouda notices that the spider's legs look just like crab legs. Just then, Rodolfo breaks a crispy boiled leg to feed him some tender meat. After taking a bite, Mukouda instantly falls in love with the meat, and his hungry companions quickly come begging for a taste. After announcing that they'll have a crab party, he prepares a bunch of tasty side dishes to eat with the boiled legs. Mukouda also tells Dora to enjoy himself and treat the food as his welcome party, so the dragon happily accepts his offer. As they begin snacking, Mukouda leaves his familiars to chow down while he prepares a special dish for himself. He grills some spider legs, but his partners start begging him for that as well. Left with no choice, Mukouda gives the grilled legs to his friends, who devour them without hesitation. As Mukouda grills another batch of legs, Dora says he's glad that he chased him all this way. This surprises Mukouda, so the pixie dragon explains that he always lost track of him because Fel was so fast. Mukouda finally realizes that the poor forest spiders were just attacking because they were scared of Dora, while Fel massacred them without a hint of guilt. Feeling bad for the weak creatures, he decides to pay his respects by thoroughly enjoying their delicious remains. After the feast, Mukouda creates his own bath in the Adventurer Guild's yard. While he relaxes inside with Sui, Fel and Dora lie exhausted in the stables. After getting out of the bath, Mukouda heads to bed, remembering that he needs to return the spider shells to Rodolfo. He feels like he forgot something else, but falls asleep before he can recall it. The next morning, Mukouda returns the spider shells to Rodolfo and gives him some leftover food as thanks. The pleased dwarf happily accepts the meat, but Mukouda thinks he should give him some more food. He starts pulling out his earth dragon corpse, but remembers that this powerful creature could cause incredible shock if he isn't careful. Finally, Mukouda steps aside and lets Rodolfo look at the dragon, leaving the dwarf shocked to his core. He points out that Mukouda could basically buy an entire kingdom with that creature, but Mukouda asks if he can find someone to process the dragon meat first. After thinking for a bit, Rodolfo remembers that there's someone in the city of Dolan who can help, so he gives Mukouda a letter of recommendation for the city's guild master. As Mukouda accepts the letter, Rodolfo admits that the guild master of Dolan is a very talented individual, but he has a strange side to him. Afterward, Mukouda and his party head out of Krail, ready to visit their target destination, the City of Dungeons. Once they reach Dolan, Mukouda is excited to explore, while Fel looks forward to the tough challenges of the dungeon city. Since Mukouda is a certified wimp, he doesn't want to go to the dungeon, but his familiars remind him that he's going there to get some earth dragon meat processed. Excited for the meat, Fel rushes to the city, but they're all forced to wait in line at the town's border. Dora wonders why they can't just barge in, so Mukouda reminds them that they can't just bypass security like a bunch of illegals. After Mukouda calms down his pets, the rest of the people in line finally notice the legendary beasts behind them. Seeing them so terrified, Mukouda quickly tells everyone that the monsters are just his familiars, while the border guards come over to check the commotion. Mukouda tells the guards that he's only there to see the guild master. After he shows them his guild cards, the guards wonder if they should trust him, but suddenly, a handsome elf walks over. The elf says that Mukouda is his guest since he's the one with all the rare beasts. As Elrond introduces himself as the Dolan guild master, his eyes pop out when he notices Dora sitting on Mukouda's shoulder. He takes Mukouda and his familiars inside the guild, saying that Rodolfo already explained the situation to him. Then, Elrond brings out a magic dragon stand for Dora to sit on, but Dora finds Mukouda's bag more comfortable. Seeing it lays around, Elrond quickly starts writing all his observations for his research. Dora feels uncomfortable with the elf's behavior, while the elf wonders why it's acting so differently from its recorded behavior. Then, Elrond remembers the earth dragon, so he starts taking Mukouda to the warehouse to process it. However, his assistant, called Uger, interrupts to remind him that he has a meeting with the merchant guild's leader. As Elrond tries to postpone it, Uger shoots him a murderous glare. Once they get into the warehouse, Elrond asks Mukouda to show him the dragon, remembering how fearsome the legendary creatures can be. He recalls that during his youth, a grand party was organized to kill a dragon. At that time, he was only a B-rank adventurer, so he wasn't even allowed to process the dragon's meat. After that incident, Elrond trained hard to become an S-rank adventurer just to look at a dragon again, but nobody dared to kill another dragon. Now, he finds his wish come true, as Mukouda lays out the giant reptile in front of his eyes. Seeing the legendary creature, Elrond starts frothing with greed, and he pulls out some creepy experimentation tools to start checking its meat. As he starts checking all the dragon's important measurements for research, Fel wonders why he isn't just giving him the meat. Mukouda quiets his hungry dog before Elrond asks him what Dora likes to eat. Mukouda tells him that Dora doesn't actually have a preference, and he eats basically anything he cooks. This information turns Elrond's world upside down, since the research shows that pixie dragons are exclusively herbivorous. However, Mukouda explains that he eats almost everything, especially meat. Elrond is confused about how Mukouda can communicate with the little dragon. When Mukouda reveals that Dora communicates with him through telepathy, Elrond is left even more flabbergasted and starts bombarding him with questions about his beast. Thankfully, Ygr drags him back, apologizing for his master's unhinged behavior. He guarantees that Elrond is a skilled processor despite his goofy antics. So Fel wonders when he'll give him the dragon's precious meat. Elrond wonders if Fel doesn't want the dragon's valuable skin and other materials, but Fel is only interested in stuffing his gut. Seeing Fel so desperate, Elrond starts begging Mukouda to let him taste it. He tells Elrond that Fel gets to decide who shares their meat, so Fel thinks it's only fair to let Elrond have some meat, as long as he can provide some good cuts. Afterward, Mukouda and the gang lie outside, exhausted from Elrond's constant yapping. Fel remembers how much the elf bothered them, asking billions of random questions for his research. Despite that, Elrond couldn't process the entire dragon in just one day, so now they feel like their life is meaningless. Seeing them all so hungry, Mukouda decides to order some instant food. Dora is curious since he hasn't seen the online store before. As soon as Fel spots it, he asks Mukouda if they can get some wagyu this time. However, Mukouda notices that there's a festival going on in Japan, so he orders some festival food. Once the food and ingredients arrive, Mukouda takes out a cooking pot to start preparing. His familiars wonder why he's using such a strange pot, so Mukouda explains that he's going to cook the veggies in it. Fel gets angry since he hates plants, but Mukouda tells him to be patient for the good flavors. He starts heating the pot and puts all the veggies to the side before adding the meat and drizzling sauce all over it. As Mukouda patiently cooks the delicious food, his band of belly stuffers tries to control themselves from going crazy. Once the food is done, Mukouda gives it to Fel, who feels disappointed that half the plate is vegetables. Mukouda tells him to just try it, so Fel takes a bite of the dish. As Fel enjoys the rich flavors, the others also start tasting the food. Soon, Fel gives up the idea of avoiding all veggies and asks for another serving after finishing his current one. Mukouda happily feeds all of his pets before taking out some butter sandwiches to eat. As he opens the box of sandwiches, Sui curiously comes up, so Mukouda gives him a sandwich to try. The baby slime instantly falls in love with the sweet treat, and the other two come over after seeing its delighted reaction. Fel and Dora wonder if sweets can be good too, so Mukouda gives them some sandwiches as well. As both of them try it, they enjoy the sweet, but the sandwich feels too small for them. They start demanding their master for more treats, who wonders what he did to deserve such greedy partners. The next day, a sleep-deprived Mukouda heads to the Adventurers Guild after his familiars kept pestering him about the dragon meat all night. As he greets Ygr, Elrond comes out of his warehouse, looking like he just ran 5 marathons straight. Excited, he explains that he spent the entire last night researching and experimenting on the dragon's body, so now he's finally ready to actually butcher it. Once he's ready, Elrond takes out a special mithril knife to pierce the dragon's tough skin. However, when he tries to cut it, the knife shatters like glass, leaving everyone stunned. Elrond starts crying that he broke his guild's precious treasure. Fel asks him how he plans to process the precious dragon meat without a knife. Elrond responds that he'll need to prepare a blade even stronger than mithril, so he'll have to wait a while before he can process the dragon. This news sends Fel into depression, and he collapses from the sheer emotional trauma. On the ground, Fel thinks his life is ruined. While Ygr points out that their guild doesn't have any other mithril knives, he tells Mukouda that they need to get more mithril ore from the dungeon to craft a new blade, so Fel immediately gets up to dash over there. Mukouda stops his hungry dog, reminding him that if he went all out and destroyed everything in the dungeon just to get some mithril, he'd become too popular and would ruin their peaceful life. After Mukouda's warning, Fel finally calms down, so he starts preparing a normal lunch to cheer him up. He takes out some thinly sliced orc meat, preparing it with the leftover veggies from their previous lunch. While flipping the ingredients in a frying pan, Mukouda adds the sauces and spices, adding the remaining flavor to his dish. Once the food is cooked, he pours it all over fragrant boiled rice to complete the dish. Before Fel Fel can dig in, Mukouda adds an egg to his dish just for some extra flavor. As everyone starts eating the tasty dish, they quickly forget about the precious dragon meat. Mukouda feels relieved that he doesn't have to deal with their whining, but he knows that he needs to fix the dragon problem as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the sky, the four goddesses keep crying that Mukouda isn't sending them any gifts. Suddenly, two men pop up, angry that the girls are abusing their powers to extort gifts from a weakling. Hearing them argue with each other, Mukouda tells the goddesses to leave him out of it, but the two men butt in. One of them introduces himself as the god of blacksmithing called Hephaestus, while the other calls himself the god of war, named Vahan. When Mukouda learns that Hephaestus is a blacksmith, he asks if the god can do something about the knife. Hephaestus responds that he can enhance any blade he makes to be of a higher quality. Of course, he isn't ready to just hand out his blacksmithing blessing for free, so Hephaestus demands some alcohol from him. Meanwhile, Vahan is interested in the otherworldly items from Mukouda's supermarket, which angers the girls. Naturally, Hephaestus ignores them and focuses on giving Mukouda his blessings, but he realizes that Mukouda doesn't have any talent for blacksmithing. Then, the god's attention falls on Sui, whom he thinks has great potential. Seeing that Hephaestus can't buff Mukouda, Vagon decides to take the chance and enhance his war powers. However, Mukouda refuses, saying he doesn't like fighting, but Vagon reminds him that he's going to explore a dungeon soon. Then, he starts thinking about another target, so Mukouda tells him to bless Fel and Dora. As the two of them begin blessing Fel, Dora, and Sui, Mukouda orders some offerings for all of the gods. Once they receive the offerings, the boys enjoy their food while the girls gush over their beauty products. Remembering Mukouda's past neglect, Ninrir warns him not to forget her offerings again. He feels frustrated that he'll need to send even more offerings to the gods, so he turns his attention to studying Sui's blacksmithing skill. He thinks the dungeon will be a great opportunity to test Sui's new abilities, but Fel reminds him that they already have some pure mithril from the mithril lizard he defeated. Remembering the ore, Mukouda asks Fel why he wanted to hunt in the dungeon, even though they already had some, but the wolf just shrugs it off. Then, Mukouda reaches into his item storage and takes out the mithril chunks. He asks Sui to forge them into special knives, so Sui takes the chunks and dissolves them inside its body. After lots of bubbling and gurgling, Sui finally produces a beautiful crystal knife, and Mukouda immediately notices it's of high quality. He's relieved that they don't have to risk their lives in the dangerous dungeon, but Fel gets annoyed since he wanted to try eating some exotic dungeon monsters. Afterward, Mukouda visits Elrond, who's having an existential crisis because he can't find a blade better than mithril. Seeing him so distraught, Mukouda gives Ugur the mithril knife that Sui crafted and asks him to pass it to Elrond. The elf carefully brings the knife close to the dragon's body, terrified that even the slightest mistake could shatter both the blade and his hopes once again. However, the knife easily cuts through the tough skin, surprising Elrond with its quality. He wonders how Mukouda got such an amazing piece, but Mukouda acts like he got it from a top secret source. Elrond almost asks Mukouda to reveal his secrets, but he calms down and goes back to processing the dragon. Mukouda wonders how long it'll take him to finish processing the whole thing, so Elrond tells him it'll take at least 3 days. Fel gets angry that he still has to wait for so long, but Mukouda reminds him that the dragon is a huge monster with loads of meat to process. Fel nods in agreement, but suggests they explore the dungeon while Elrond works his magic. Mukouda refuses to go, feeling scared of the danger, but Sui also starts begging to let him have some fun too. Sometime later, they reach the dungeon entrance, where the receptionist warns Mukouda that it might take his party up to a month to make it out. She also advises him to pack plenty of food if he plans to venture into the deeper floors. She explains that no one has ever cleared the 30-floor dungeon before, which makes Mukouda immediately consider packing up and heading home instead. However, Fel starts glaring at him, so Mukouda reminds him that if he doesn't stock up on a ton of delicious food, they'll have to eat rotten scraps in the dark dungeon. This finally calms him down, and they agree to wait. Smiling at their obedience, Mukouda takes them all on a shopping trip, and he buys a bunch of veggies to cook in the dungeon. Then, he notices a magic stove outside a shop. Fel wonders why Mukouda wants such a huge stove, so he explains that it'll be very useful for cooking. Just then, the shopkeeper comes out and starts promoting his products to Mukouda. He explains that the stove also includes a massive oven capable of cooking entire cacatris monsters, which immediately piques Mukouda's interest in trying new monster recipes. When Mukouda asks about the price, the shopkeeper tells him it costs 860 gold. Mukouda almost gets a heart attack from this price, but Fel pushes him to buy it since his bottomless pit of a stomach craves new food. As the others also put pressure on Mukouda, he finally agrees to buy the magic stove. Later that night, Mukouda cooks dinner in some huge stock pots. He asks Sui for some help and starts serving some tender bull meat to his party. The next day, Mukouda decides to cook a few days worth of food before entering the dungeon. For his first dish, he decides to braise some orc general meat. Then, Mukouda makes some red boar cabbage rolls, after which he makes a simple beef and veggie stir-fry. As he adds the ingredients to the stir-fry, he feels satisfied to use up all his remaining ingredients. Then, he adds a ton of vegetables, spices, and meat to a large bowl, before boiling it to make a nice orc meat soup. After that, he makes a wyvern stew with a rich gravy, but Fel gets in the way as he adds some sauce to it. With all the dishes cooked up, Mukouda thinks they're ready for the first few days in the dungeon. His hungry companions get excited to dig in, but he reminds them that all the food is meant for the dungeon. Afterward, Mukouda is cleaning his room. When Sui comes in with a sword he forged for him, Mukouda admires the blade's sharpness, thinking that with this sword, he should be safe in the dungeon. Sui climbs up his shoulder, happy to help his master, but Yuger knocks on their door for an urgent task. He explains that the earth dragon has been completely processed, so Mukouda leaves to prepare his goods before going to the guild. However, Yuger stops him, saying he's too busy to wait for him at the door. Feeling bad for the man, Mukouda heads to the Adventurers Guild, where he finds Elrond gushing over some shiny bottles of dragon blood. Elrond keeps ignoring Mukouda, obsessed with the blood, so Mukouda tries to get his attention. When Elrond finally realizes that Mukouda is waiting for him, he proudly shows off the mountains of dragon materials he got from the processing, saying the past few days were the best of his life. He asks Mukouda if he can buy some of the materials for the guild. Of course, Mukouda agrees since he became broke after buying the magic stove. Excited, Elrond asks him to buy 2 bottles of dragon blood, revealing that they are used to make the most powerful healing potions in the market. He also asks to buy half of the liver, since it has an even more potent effect than its blood. Finally, Elrond asks Mukouda if he can have one of the dragon's fangs to create an amazing sword. Mukouda agrees to sell him all the items, but wonders why Elrond is only buying just a few materials. In response, Elrond reveals that just these few items will empty the guild's entire treasury, so he can't afford to buy anything else. He offers to pay Mukouda close to 4,000 gold coins for all the precious materials, which he happily accepts. Mukouda feels shocked that just a tiny couple of materials were worth so much, and wonders how much total money he can get if he sells the entire dragon. Meanwhile, Fel isn't very impressed since he can't see any dragon meat. He suspects that Elrond is keeping it for himself, and ends up threatening him. However, Elrond calmly explains that he is storing the meat in a special cooling room to keep it fresh. He takes Mukouda and the others inside, where they find an intricate magic ice setup that is storing the tons of meat. As Fel feels satisfied with his prize, Sui helps Mukouda load up all the meat into his storage. While he finishes loading the meat, Elrond shyly asks if he can taste some of the dragon's meat as well. Mukouda nods, remembering his promise to share some meat with him, and the rest of his gang also gets excited to try out the exotic flavors. Delighted, Elrond takes Mukouda to his own house so he can easily cook the meat for them all. Mukouda settles for Elrond's lawn, where he takes out the giant magic stove. Elrond is surprised to see that Mukouda has access to such advanced technology. When he notices Mukouda using his item box, Elrond tries to show off that he has one too. This is the first time Mukouda has ever seen someone else with an item box besides himself. Elrond explains that elves can naturally use high-level magic, but he also combined his wind and forest magic talents to become a top-class adventurer back in his days. As Elrond keeps rambling, Mukouda ignores him and starts cooking. First, he rubs some salt and pepper all over the giant slabs of dragon meat before peeling the vegetables for the dish. After chopping some onions and carrots, Mukouda loads up a cooking dish with the meat and veggies, then pours some olive oil and seasoning over it. Finally, he puts the prepared meat into the oven and waits for it to roast the whole whole dish as the oven works its magic. Mukouda's familiars continue drooling over the delicious smell. As he watches them, Fel and Elran start rubbing against each other while trying to get even closer to the oven. Once the food is done, Mukouda takes out the roasted meat and places it on a table for everyone. He pokes the meat with a toothpick, finding out that it's cooked perfectly. As Mukouda slices the roast meat into thinner stripes, he remembers to finish it off with a drizzle of Fel's favorite garlic sauce. After that, he tells everyone to dig in, and they scream in joy before they can even eat. While everyone devours the dragon, Mukouda sits down and takes a bite of his own portion. The meat's exotic flavor sends a jolt through his senses, and he marvels at how dragon meat can blend the taste of so many different kinds of meat. As Mukouda realizes why Fel was so excited to try the dragon's meat, the monsters don't even stop to talk as they continue gulping their food down. Fel thinks that he should hunt a few more dragons for the future, worried that the dragons would go extinct. Mukouda warns Fel not to go overboard. Soon, everyone finishes their first serving and immediately asks Mukouda for seconds. As Mukouda hands out the other portions, he asks Dora if he's okay with cannibalism. The pixie dragon reminds him that he's a different species from earth dragons, so it doesn't actually count. As Mukouda ignores Dora's questionable morals, he notices Elrond crying at his chair. The elf thanks Mukouda for allowing him to experience such a heavenly meal, thinking he's truly blessed that he got to process and eat one of the rarest creatures on the planet. Seeing Elrond's insane amounts of joy, Mukouda is creeped out, but they soon finish their entire meal. On the way back home, Fel feels energetic from all the nutritious meat he just ate. Excited, he announces that they'll visit the dungeon tomorrow, so Mukouda decides to send his offerings to gods in case he forgets later. Later that night, he browses through the dessert section of his online grocery store while the goddesses watch him in anticipation. Watching them wait, Vahan asks Ninrir if she granted Mukouda a defensive skill. She says that she just gave him a wind blessing. Vahan points out that she was too stingy with her blessings, saying that Mukouda could get hurt without proper defense. As the girls stare in dread, Vahan asks them what they'll do if somehow Mukouda loses his life in the dungeon. Hephaestus reminds them that Mukouda is their only key to otherworldly treats, and the girls remain silent. Suddenly, Ninrir goes into panic mode, realizing she needs to protect her living sweets dispenser at all costs. The rest of the girls also realize their mistake, so Hephaestus tells them that he's been brewing a special blessing for Mukouda. Meanwhile, Mukouda wonders what the fuss is all about, and he starts sending his offerings to them. However, Hephaestus talks about giving him a buff, which Mukouda firmly refuses. He doesn't want to get tied down to another god, and this angers Hephaestus. He gives Mukouda the blessing without his consent, and Vahan laughs, happy that he can extort more drinks out of him. The rest of the girls also celebrate, happy that Mukouda is now safe. The next day, he goes back to the dungeon's entrance with his party. There, he meets the nonchalant receptionist from his first town, and she introduces herself as Vainka. Mukouda wonders why she changed cities, and she explains that the Dolan Guild requested help from other guilds since this dungeon has become a popular spot lately. As she calmly finishes the registration, Mukouda realizes that she's just there to look at Fel the Fluffball. When he leaves with his party, Vainka steals a glance at Fel, completely in love with him. As they stand at the dungeon's entrance, Dora and Sui feel excited for a challenge. Mukouda gulps nervously as he looks down the dark entrance, so Fel reminds him there's no way they're turning back now. After gathering his courage, Mukouda finally heads down the staircase. As they make their way down the first level, Fel sniffs out some weak monsters in the area. Mukouda notes that the strongest monsters and loot are around the 10th and 15th levels, so Fel tells him to hop on his back to skip ahead to the good part. Ignoring his master's terrified screams, the Fenrir dashes through the dungeon halls, plowing through every monster in his path. Suddenly, an arrow shoots out of nowhere and almost turns Mukouda into monster poop. Luckily, Fel's barrier blocks the arrow, and he tells Mukouda that he randomly stepped on a trap. Mukouda wonders how the dungeon has these carefully planted traps, even though it's a natural structure. Fel explains that each dungeon is like a living creature that attracts humans with treasures, so it can kill them with monsters and absorb their nutrients. While Fel continues his explanation, stronger arrows bang on the barrier, scaring Mukouda to his wit's end. One of the traps even triggers a giant pitfall, but Fel uses a wind spell to glide over it. As the arrogant Fenrir mocks the dungeon for its pathetic traps, Dora and Sui praise him for his skills. After a lot of running, Fel finally reaches the dungeon's 10th floor. Mukouda asks Fel what he wants to do, so he responds that the monsters are still too weak on this level. Knowing that the level's boss is just a venom tarantula, Dora feels bored since it can mow them down like house spiders. To advance deeper, Fel heads straight toward the boss room. When they arrive, they find a group of adventurers trembling in fear at the sight of him. Mukouda quickly tells them that Fel is his familiar, so they calm down. He asks why they're all gathered outside the room's gate, so the adventurers explain that the dungeons have a lot of unspoken rules. It turns out that before one party finishes fighting a boss, the others cannot enter its room. The only way others can enter is if the party asks for help, but even then, they would get all the loot from the boss's drops. After explaining this, the adventurers warn Mukouda that there are bad parties out there who steal monster drops from other people's victories, with one more thing to worry about. Mukouda sits down to wait while the other parties fight the boss. A short while later, his familiars start getting bored, but Mukouda reminds them to be patient. Soon, the final group runs out of the room and tells Mukouda he can go in. He wonders why they're returning from the floor instead of heading deeper, so the adventurers explain that higher level monsters are too strong for them. Understanding their reasons, Mukouda nods and heads inside, where the room turns pitch black. As the terrifying venom tarantula roars at them, Mukouda starts screaming like a girl, but Dora fries it with a fireball. The proud dragon flies around, happy to have his powers enhanced by the god of war's blessing. As the boss's corpse disappears, a bunch of valuable drops spawn from it. Mukouda picks up a bare spider leg, and he realizes that the dungeon automatically processes the items, so he gets the best parts. Despite his exhaustion, Fel rushes him to the next level, where they meet a terrifying orc general as the final boss. Before Mukouda can even finish feeling scared, his gang turns the orc into pork chops. After the 11th floor, their party continues exploring deeper, but everyone gets tired from using their mana. Noticing their hunger, Mukouda wonders where they should set up their dinner, so Fel scouts for an open room. When they reach the open room, they find a bunch of parties resting in the safe space. As Mukouda's group sits down in a corner, they're unexpectedly greeted by Werner's party. Surprised to see a familiar face, Werner shakes Mukouda's hand, who feels happy to meet some old friends. As they all sit down together, Werner explains that his party recently entered the city to explore the dungeon. Mukouda tells them that he was supposed to visit the ocean town of Berlin, but Fel was itching to explore the dungeon first. As they laugh at Fel's antics, the party notices Mukouda's new familiars. They get interested in Dora, so Mukouda informs them that he's a pixie dragon. Then, they ask about Sui, so Mukouda proudly calls it his favorite slime-shaped nuclear warhead, falling in love with the monster's cuteness. The two girls immediately start gushing over Sui and Dora. Werner wonders how Mukouda ended up with two more exotic pets besides Fel, but Mukouda reminds them that they're just a bunch of selfish gluttons who followed him for the food. Laughing at his own misery, Mukouda decides to share some of his dinner with the party. Knowing that the food costs 10 times his net worth, Werner hesitates, but agrees to share since he doesn't want to give it up either. Seeing that Werner's party has some bread, Mukouda takes out his wyvern stew to serve with it. For a little bit, the party hesitates to eat the precious cuisine, but they immediately gulp it down after getting a bite. As they all praise the heavenly cooking, Mukouda feels happy. But then everyone asks what meat he used for the stew. When he reveals it's wyvern meat, the poor party almost chokes in shock. Werner apologizes to Mukouda for eating such a precious ingredient, so he explains that Fel and Sui hunted about 3 truckloads worth of wyverns. Seeing that he has so much meat left, they hesitate, but eventually ask for another delicious serving. After everyone's done eating, Werner's party gets up to explore the floor a bit more. Mukouda wishes them good luck, and they leave, so Fel reminds him to get moving to the deeper floors. Soon, they start plowing through the deeper levels, treating the poor dungeon bosses like stray dogs. Once they enter the 16th floor, Mukouda notices that the atmosphere of the dungeon has become much more sinister. Fel explains that all dungeons change as you go deeper, but he suddenly steps on a trap tile as the entire dungeon starts shaking. Mukouda clings to Fel, who notices a huge boulder dropping from a trap behind him. Of course, Mukouda starts running like a chicken before Fel shatters the boulder with a wind blast. The force of the blast knocks Mukouda flat on his face before he gets up again. After a while, Meanwhile, the party arrives at the 20th floor, and Dora asks Mukouda if he's impressed with their strength. Mukouda doesn't care about his family's strength, but he stops when Sui calls out to him, showing a secret area in a wall. When Mukouda inspects the hole, he finds a treasure chest hidden in it, so he starts singing praises for Sui, delighted to get some good loot. Before he can carelessly open the chest, though, Fel pulls him back, reminding him that the chest could be a trap. Sure enough, when Mukouda uses his appraiser on the treasure chest, he finds out that it's trapped with a poisonous gas that would give him conditions much worse than lung cancer. Disappointed, Mukouda gives up on opening the chest, but Fel offers to open it for him since his major blessing can protect him from the poison. Before Fel can open the chest, Mukouda receives a message from Fenrir, informing him that since he already has 3 minor blessings from her girls, he should be able to withstand the poison without a problem. As she happily tells him to enjoy the dungeon's exciting challenges to the fullest, Mukouda gets up and tells Fel that his 3 minor blessings now have the effect of a major one. Knowing he's safe, Mukouda opens the chest, which instantly releases a burst of noxious gas. After the gas clears, Mukouda looks into the chest, but finds it completely empty. Angered that he got tricked, he gets the motivation to head deeper into the dungeon and get real treasure this time. After exploring the 21st floor for a bit, Mukouda finds an even larger treasure chest, and Fel notes that it must have something special inside. This time, Mukouda scans the chest before opening it and finds out that it's just a disguised mimic. However, with the 3 lethal familiars following him, he gets the confidence to open the chest and get its loot. He decides to take out his mithril sword and step forward to open the chest, only for it to reveal a fanged mouth and lunge at them. Scared out of his mind, he mindlessly slashes his sword at the mimic, which turns into a bunch of plywood from his attacks. Soon, the defeated mimic turns into a real treasure chest, and Mukouda opens it to find a bunch of precious jewels and accessories inside. Nearby, Dora finds the door to the 22nd floor, so they all head down through it. This time, Mukouda is shocked to see that the floor opens up to a vast open sky instead of the walled corridors they had been exploring. Even Fel gets excited to see what the new flue has to offer, but Mukouda feels scared that it might have an unexpected danger they can't handle. However, Fel detects someone familiar in the area, so he starts rushing towards them. After running for a bit, he stops at a clearing where a swarm of giant killer mantis ambushes them. The mantises scare Mukouda, but Fel easily burns them all to a crisp. While Mukouda wonders why he even bothers getting scared, Dora and Sui start yelling at Fel for giving them no chances to fight. Seeing them all argue, Mukouda tells everyone that they should take turns fighting so all of them can enjoy themselves. They all agree to his reasonable advice. So when the group encounters a bear next, Dora enters the battlefield. The excited dragon pierces through the bear's body like a knife, while Sui faces a horde of poison butterflies next. Fel warns him that the butterflies can paralyze it to suck all of its bodily fluids, but Sui simply melts them all with its pew-pew lasers. After a while of walking through the floor, Fel detects that the presence from before is getting closer. Before he can go check it out, Mukouda stops him, thinking it's probably the floor's boss. He suggests they boost their stats first by eating some food from his online store. Fel knows that they're strong enough to handle the boss anyway, but he doesn't give up the chance to have some extra treats. As they sit down to order, Mukouda decides to get some premium wagyu along with a bunch of other delicacies. Watching him stack orders upon orders of mouth-watering dishes, the group create a flood with their drooling mouths. Once all the food arrives, they scarf it down in an instant before asking for seconds. Surprised by their speed, Mukouda gives them the second batch and sits down to eat some of his own, before he can even finish his small serving, though his familiars ask him for a third serving. Once they all finish the food, the stuffed monsters plop down to rest. Mukouda decides to check Fel's stats and is surprised by a 50% stat buff. Next, he looks at Dora and Sui, who also have an insane stat buff. Mukouda wonders if he went overboard, but he thinks it's fine since they're going to face a boss anyway. However, his partners get curious to see how much his own stats have increased, so Mukouda pulls up his own stat menu. For some reason, he only got a 5% stat boost, leaving them all disappointed. After they're done looking at their buffs, the group starts walking towards the presence Fel is sensing. All three beasts feel excited to fight a real opponent, while Mukouda feels nervous. Soon, Fel is surprised as he spots an S-rank Vasuki serpent nearby. Seeing the terrifying serpent's rank, Mukouda almost has a heart attack. He notices that the serpent can spray a poisonous smog that would rot his insides, but Fel explains that he doesn't have to worry about it because of his blessings. Sui and Dora also get ready to fight the powerful beast, but Mukouda hides behind a tree like an absolute pansy. Fel reminds him that he also has a major blessing, but Mukouda isn't man enough to risk being on the battlefield. Tired of his pathetic attitude, the beasts march forward to fight the serpent. It immediately sprays its poisonous smog at them, but they all shrug it off and keep charging forward. Fel paralyzes the serpent with a lightning bolt, while Sui melts its neck with acid. Then, Dora finishes it off by piercing straight through the poor snake's neck, leaving it to fall dead. As Mukouda's murderous belly fillers celebrate their victory, he feels sick of their monstrous strength. Since the boss is defeated, Fel finds a magic circle that will teleport them to the next floor. He warns Mukouda that they all need to touch the formation at the same time to use it. Otherwise, someone could get left behind. With this advice in mind, Dora gets on top of Mukouda's head, while Sui jumps into his arms. Then, Mukouda holds Fel, who activates the magic circle with his paw. Soon, the formation grows brightly and teleports them into another cave-like space. Mukouda notices that despite looking like earlier floors, this one is massive. Fel spots a hole through one of the room's walls, so they all head through it. Inside, Mukouda spots some gigantic monsters, so Fel explains that the floor is designed to be big enough for them. Before Mukouda can even start planning how to defeat the monsters, his team heads in and obliterates them from existence. After defeating the monsters, they explore the giant floor. Because the floor is so big, everyone gets tired of walking so much. Mukouda decides to cook his familiars a special feast, but he stops after noticing a strange area. Fel detects that it's a safe space with no monsters nearby, so Mukouda decides to pull out his cooking set there. As Mukouda takes out the food, the beasts get excited to stuff their greedy faces again. They munch on delicious sandwiches and rich soups and get exhausted once they're done. Mukouda asks Fel if it's time to sleep, so he nods. Before they can rest, though, a group of injured adventurers hobbles to the safe spot. After laying down their wounded teammate, they ask Mukouda if he has some healing potions, so he quickly takes out one and rushes towards them. As the leader pours the potion over the man's wound, it instantly patches up, leaving him shocked. He wonders if Mukouda gave him a high-grade potion, so he nods, explaining that his potions are higher quality than regular ones. Then, Mukouda asks the leader if his teammate is fine, so he tells him he'll recover quickly thanks to the potion's healing. While his relieved teammates start crying, the leader introduces them as an A-rank party called Tempest. After thanking Mukouda for the potions, he offers to pay 15 gold coins for them. Mukouda thinks the payment is too much, so he offers the leader some low-grade potions for his money. The man is surprised by his kindness, and Mukouda asks if he can tell him how his teammate got injured. He reveals that they encountered 3 Spriggans in the boss room. Mukouda asks Fel if Spriggans are really that dangerous, so he tells him that a Spriggan is larger than a Minotaur. Then, the Tempest leader explains that the first time he entered this floor, there was only 1 Spriggan in the boss room. However, there were suddenly 3 of them the second time he returned, so his team got overwhelmed. However, he thinks that Mukouda will be completely fine against the Spriggans since he has the legendary Fenrir on his side. Mukouda feels awkward that even Tempest has heard about his murder puppies, but the adventurer reassures him he won't spread his secret. Then, he tells Mukouda that his party will head back to the surface in the morning. Meanwhile, Fel lazily opens his eyes and tells Mukouda to get some sleep since he'll destroy the Spriggans himself. The next morning, as Mukouda's party heads deeper into the dungeon, he wonders if Tempest can safely make it back to the surface. Fel reassures him that they'll be fine, especially since he gave them some of his stat-boosting sandwiches to help them recover their mana. Soon, they arrive at the boss's room, where Mukouda spots the Spriggans sitting cross-legged. He feels terrified of the powerful monsters, but as always, the party rushes straight in. After his familiars turn the Spriggans into fossils, Mukouda walks inside and finds a magic bag in the loot. He notices that time passes in this magic magic box just like in real life and picks it up, thinking it'll be useful. Then, as Mukouda collects the rest of the loot, he starts feeling like a thief for taking his partner's share. However, Fel doesn't care and tells Mukouda that the next floors are also filled with giant monsters. Mukouda decides to fight the bosses on the next floor, but he ends up screaming on the ground like a helpless baby. The poor boss monsters desperately try to hit him, but his perfect defense skill just nullifies all their attacks. Despite his strength, Mukouda is too terrified to actually attack the monsters, so Dora finishes them off for him. After clearing the floor, the party quickly clears the next few floors as well and heads down to the 29th floor. Mukouda is surprised that they're only 2 levels away from finishing the dungeon. Then he steps into the teleporter. When they appear on the 29th floor, Mukouda is shocked to see a giant desert stretching out before his eyes. While Mukouda feels annoyed by the harsh desert, his pets are excited to explore the new area. He gets on Fel's back to start exploring, but they all quickly lose their energy after the intense heat humbles them. As everyone stops moving, Mukouda notices Sui completely deflated on the floor and quickly scoops him up into his bag. Thankfully, Dora spots a rock nearby, so they all head over to rest under its shade. Still, Mukouda feels bothered by the unbearable heat, so Fel casts a wind barrier that keeps the hot air away from them. Mukouda is surprised that the barrier helps so much, but Fel reminds him that he can only use the barrier for a few days before his mana runs out, since they need to actually find the floor's exit in this giant desert. Mukouda decides to preserve Fel's mana by ordering some summer products. After getting a summer hoodie and sunglasses, he buys a bunch of electrolyte drinks to rehydrate everyone. After they chug the refreshing drinks, Mukouda orders some ice cream to cheer them all up. As they munch on the tasty ice cream, everyone cheers up. But reality hits them hard when they start walking in the desert again. Fel reminds Mukouda that the temperature will drop harshly at night, so they need to cover as much distance as possible during the day. As they rush through the giant desert, the party encounters some huge sandworms. Once night approaches, they all settle down near a campfire. Mukouda feels like freezing from the chilly cold, but Fel tells him that it's even colder outside his barrier. Seeing they've got no choice, Mukouda decides to order a bunch of heating pads and warm clothes for some heat. Then, he pulls out a pot to make some hot food, which gets everyone's energy up. After a long while of careful cooking, he prepares some hot udon noodles for them. As they dig into the silky noodles, the party feels their stomachs warming up. Refreshed after having the hearty noodles, Fel tells Mukouda that they're getting very close to the level's boss. Hearing this, Mukouda tells him to get a good night's rest before they fight, and they all go to sleep on some warm futons. The next morning, they find the level's final boss, which is a strong earth golem. Unfortunately for the golem, Fel shatters it into pieces with a single lightning strike. Once the boss is defeated, they find the magic circle in a giant space. Fel asks if everyone is ready for the final floor, and everyone nods. Then, he places his paw on the teleporter and activates it, which takes them straight to the dungeon's final boss. Fel notes that the monster is a behemoth, and the party gets amped up for the fight. Dora flies up and tosses Sui towards the monster, who shoots some acid at it. Then, Dora charges into the behemoth, but it easily knocks both of them back into the dungeon's walls. Mukouda rushes to check on his injured teammates, who note how tough the boss is. Fel explains that behemoths are naturally resistant to both physical and magical attacks, but they still take a bit of damage from each hit. Suddenly, the monster charges at them, so they all avoid it as it rams into a wall. Fel tells them to attack at full strength to break the behemoth's defenses, so the party members all attack together. Mukouda notices that the behemoth looks unharmed, but Fel reassures him that it will get weakened with each hit. He tells Sui and Dora to continue attacking, so they all gang up on the behemoth and continue pummeling it with small attacks. The huge monster roars in fury as it fails to hit any of its smaller foes. Then, Dora charges up some massive ice spikes, which finally dig into the behemoth and make it bleed for the first time. Encouraged by their progress, Dora and Sui think they're going to win. Suddenly, the behemoth starts charging up a hyper beam and shoots it straight at Mukouda. Thankfully, Fel saves him with a sturdy ice wall. He notes that Dora's attack was so effective because Sui's acid weakened the behemoth's armor where it hit. With this information in mind, Fel tells Sui to shower the behemoth in acid. The slime obeys, enlarging to a massive size before dousing the poor boss in an acid bath. The strong acid melts through the behemoth's tough armor, allowing Dora to wound it even more with his attacks. Once the behemoth is weakened enough, enough. Fel tells Sui and Dora to step back. He unleashes his ultimate lightning bolt, which strikes the behemoth square in its weak point. The monster roars in pain before finally taking its last breath and collapsing to the ground. After the defeated behemoth disappears, everyone celebrates their massive win, and Mukouda rushes to check its loot. He finds a legendary sword called Kalidbolg and draws it out, realizing that it'll make the headlines if news leaks out. As Mukouda puts the sword in his item box, Fel tells him to serve food since he's tired. Mukouda wonders why they can't go home first, but Fel is too impatient to wait. Finally, Mukouda agrees to reward his party for their hard work and starts preparing a massive fried food feast. They all dig in, happy to enjoy themselves after an exhausting day. After finishing their meal, Mukouda and the gang burst out of the floor near the dungeon's entrance. The surrounding adventurers get confused by their sudden appearance, so Mukouda explains they were just returning from the last floor. As they all stare in shock, Fel proudly declares that they've just conquered the full dungeon. Mukouda feels awkward since he didn't want to draw any attention, but it's already too late. While the adventurers start bombarding Mukouda with questions about the bosses and loot, Elran suddenly appears out of nowhere. He congratulates Dora for his performance and drags Mukouda away, explaining that they need to submit a form to the Adventurers Guild to complete their exploration. Once they return to the guild, Elran starts praising Dora again, so Mukouda points out that Fel and Sui equally contributed to their victory. While the dragon maniac annoys Dora in the background, Yuger asks Mukouda about the kind of items they found in the dungeon. Fel interjects, saying he wants his food first, but Mukouda tells him to be patient. Then, he reaches into his bottomless storage and pulls out the Mimic's jewelry box. As they look at the box, both Yuger and Elran jump in shock since Mimics are rare creatures with very precious loot. Watching their stunned reaction, Mukouda realizes he should definitely keep the legendary sword from the last level completely secret. Then, Elrond asks Mukouda for a full report about the dungeon, but Yuger reminds him to give the tired team some time to rest. Afterward, Mukouda prepares a bath and drinks some coffee milk while sharing it with his living monster meat processors. He tells everyone to take a bath after the drink, but Fel refuses to get inside. Mukouda reminds Fel that if he doesn't take a shower, he'll end up stinking worse than a redditor. Mukouda's insult is already too much for the mythical dog. But then Sui and Dora also say he'll look like trash if he keeps this up. Although Fel feels pressured by their persuasion, suddenly he gets distracted by a noise. Mukouda thinks he's trying to change the subject, but Dora tells him he also heard it. Nearby, two kids are running away from a monstrous orc. Suddenly, the little girl trips, helpless in front of the charging beast. Luckily, Mukouda arrives just in time and sends Sui and Dora forward. The two of them turn the orc into factory meat, saving the little siblings' lives. Soon, Mukouda comes running to check on the kids, but they get terrified after seeing the giant Fenrir behind him. Mukouda tries to comfort the kids and tells them that Fel is just a glorified house dog, which pisses him off. Finally, the kids realize their lives are saved, and they start crying as the shock wears off. This surprises Mukouda, and he tries to comfort them as much as he can. After they calm down, he asks the kids about their names. The boy introduces himself as Daryl and his little sister as Iris. He tells Mukouda they're from Dolan, which shocks him since Dolan is 3 hours away from the forest. He wonders why the kids aren't with their parents, which leaves them silent. They tell Mukouda they'll answer his question if they give them the orc, so he agrees. However, Mukouda wonders how the little children will carry such a large creature, so Daryl reveals he can use his item box skill. The little boy tries to fit the orc through his storage, but its giant body is too big to shove inside. Mukouda tells him he'll help him fit the orc inside, so he asks the kids to explain their story to him. Daryl explains that he and Iris live with their mother in Dolan, while their father was an adventurer. One day, his father went to the dungeon and never returned, so the mother and the kids were left all alone. Although the three of them did their best to survive, their mother fell ill one day. Mukouda wonders if their mother is doing better, so Dylan tells him that they brought her to a priest. Although she felt a bit better after the priest's healing healing spell, she fell sick again after a while. The priest told the kids he couldn't cure her illness, so they needed a higher level priest from the royal capital. Unfortunately, the little children didn't have the money to call a priest from the capital, so they were left all alone, trying to sell herbs from the forest to pay for their mother's treatment. Hearing their painful story, even Mukouda tears up, while the kids think the orc will finally give them enough money for their mother's treatment. However, Mukouda knows that orcs are just common monsters, so the children have nowhere near enough money. As he wonders how to help the innocent children, their hungry bellies suddenly growl. Fel and the rest of the gang also tell Mukouda they want to eat, so he decides to make them a meal before doing anything else. The kids offer to help Mukouda cook, but he tells them he'll handle it. Thinking they're very good kids, he sends them away to play with Dora and Sui. As the kids play with the monsters, Mukouda decides to give them a real treat. He chops some onions and caramelizes them before frying some cicatrice meat. Then, Mukouda adds some teriyaki sauce to the meat and fries some eggs on the side. After that, he prepares a bun with veggies, cheese, and the teriyaki meat, and completes a mouth-watering burger. As soon as the kids get the burgers, they fall in love with their delicious taste. While they greedily devour the burgers, Mukouda gives them some drinks as well. Meanwhile, Fel gets annoyed that he hasn't received his own portion, so Mukouda gives him a gigantic stack of burgers. After getting their burgers, the group gang also eats their burgers, and everyone gets a satisfied belly at the end. Afterward, as Mukouda cleans the dirty dishes, the kids thank him for his gift. Although Mukouda feels touched by the pure souls thanking him, his pride gets hurt since they called him uncle. Hearing that Mukouda has become his uncle, Fel gets a smug face and taunts him. Sometime later, the children take a nap on Fel's soft fur. Mukouda drapes a blanket over them, feeling bad that the little ones have to work such dangerous jobs for their mother. While the kids sleep, Darrell speaks about helping his mom, which tugs right at Mukouda's heartstrings. He thinks about buying his mother's medicine from the online supermarket, but wonders which one to get since he doesn't know her illness. Instead, Mukouda decides to use some high-grade potions, but Fel informs him that potions only treat wounds, not illnesses. This surprises Mukouda, so Fel tells him he needs elixirs for the sick mother. However, elixirs are a rare medicine supposed to cure all illnesses, so Mukouda thinks there's no way he can get them. Then, he remembers Elrond's words that a dragon's blood can be used to create rare elixirs. With this in mind, he gives Sui some of the dragon's liver and blood, then asks the slime if he can create an elixir. After checking the ingredients, Sui tells Mukouda he can't do it for sure, but dissolves them inside his body to try anyway. As Sui gets to work processing the elixir, Mukouda leaves to make some food for the children's mother. After considering easy to digest yet nutritious meals, he decides to make a healthy meat soup. First, Mukouda chops the veggies and meat for the soup before stir-frying them all together. Then, he adds the water and broth before pouring in some soy milk as well. Once the ingredients are added, Mukouda cooks them until the soup is done. Holding the pot of hearty soup in his hands, Mukouda thinks it'll be a great treat for the kids and their mom. Nearby, Sui gets done with the elixirs and gives Mukouda 3 bottles of them. Dora wonders if Sui could even create a real elixir, so Mukouda checks its stats. After taking a look, he finds out that the bottles truly contain rare elixirs for all illnesses, which leaves him completely stunned. Overjoyed, he praises his living factory for the good work and runs off to the kids with Fel. He tells them they're going back to Dolan and puts them on Fel's back for the ride. Once the kids are on, Mukouda gets on top of Fel and reminds him to go slowly for the children. Fel nods and starts running at a graceful pace before speeding up to give the kids a fun ride. A short while later, they reach Dolan and the kids celebrate their ride. As Mukouda starts pulling out their orc from their storage, they remember selling it at the guild to pay for the priest's service. However, Mukouda tells them he found a rare medicine that can cure their mom, which gets them excited. He tells them he can't give them the precious medicine for free, so they feel a bit scared. Mukouda then says that since he's a merchant, they need to trade something for this medicine. Darrell asks him how much it costs. Mukouda tells them that only a giant monster like the orc can pay for his rare medicine, so they happily agree to exchange it. Once they agree, he gives Iris the medicine before gifting them the pot of soup. As the kids feel relieved that their mother's going to be okay, they start crying. After calming down a bit, Darrell tells Mukouda that he'll grow up to become a merchant just like him. He feels inspired to use his item box skill for his goods and make good deals just like Mukouda. The little boy's fierce determination brings even Mukouda to to tears, and he wishes both kids the best of luck. Afterward, the kids thank Mukouda for his help and leave happily, while Mukouda feels glad he could help them. Then, he remembers that they were just returning from clearing the dungeon, so he decides to throw a celebration party. Before cooking, he checks everyone's levels and finds out that they've gained a massive amount of them. The best of them is Sui, who has quadrupled his level from a tiny 22 to an incredible 88. Seeing that his pets have grown so much, Mukouda takes a look at his own stats. Unfortunately, he's still about as strong as a broken twig, but finds out that his online grocery skill has gained 1 level. After clicking on the grocery skill, Mukouda sees 2 new tenants, which gives him the option to choose between 2 specializations. While Mukouda gets confused by the options, Fel and the others get curious. They ask him what he's doing, so Mukouda tells them he doesn't know which skill tree to pick. Fel tells him to pick the burger skill, but Sui likes sweets more, so Mukouda chooses the sweets option. Fel gets angry that Mukouda just tossed his opinion into the trash like a used tissue, but Mukouda reminds him that he's a pig for sweets. Anyway, as the new sweets menu opens up, everyone starts drooling over the premium cakes in front of them. Mukouda picks a few options and orders a big box and takes out a takeaway box from it. After opening all of the takeaway boxes, Mukouda lays out a bunch of premium cakes and pies on their dinner table. Then, he gives everyone a slice of each, and they all dig in with gusto. While his familiars chomp away at the delicious cakes, Mukouda tells them he's got some lovely custard pudding as well. He places the jiggly pudding on a plate for them and takes out a cream roll for himself. As Mukouda downs some black coffee with the cream roll, Fel judges him for drinking the bitter liquid. Mukouda defends his choice, saying that the coffee's bitterness goes great with the cream's sweet taste. Meanwhile, Sui and Dora demand more pudding, but Mukouda tells them they'll turn into Americans if they eat too many sweets. Then, he suddenly realizes he forgot something, and Ninrir starts screaming at him through telepathy. While she throws a hissy fit at Mukouda for forgetting her offerings, the rest of the powerful gods also feel impatient. However, Mukouda completely ignores them and remembers the 2 kids, feeling bad that they can't taste the exquisite sweets. The next day, Elrond throws a feast for all the adventurers to celebrate the dungeon's conquest. Mukouda watches, stunned as Elrond carefully instructs each of his employees to process the various ingredients. He realizes just how much time the busy guild master has been taking out for him, but wonders if Elrond has completely forgotten him. Suddenly, Uger enters the room and angrily asks Elrond why he isn't doing his job. While the elf gets terrified, Uger scolds him for goofing around instead of completing a report and finishing Mukouda's tasks. Elrond meekly tells Uger he was just raising everyone's morale, but he drags him away to finish his real work. After bringing the guild master to Mukouda, Uger tells him they'll take care of his work. Then, he turns to Marcel and tells him to continue making food. As Mukouda watches Uger drag away the guild master like a naughty toddler, he realizes just how strict he is. Afterward, Mukouda and the party sit in a private room. There, Uger tells Mukouda there's a problem with one of the items he gave them, and shows him a storage bag. As Mukouda opens the bag, he finds it packed full of hundreds of precious gems. Since Mukouda didn't think a storage bag would already have items inside it, he never opened it. Even Fel is surprised that the bag came with items, and Elrond confirms that it's very rare for a storage bag to have items in it by default. Holding the precious dungeon gems, he explains that the guild cannot afford to buy so many of them at once. While Elrond feels upset that he got scolded for buying the Earth Dragon materials, Uger tells Mukouda that the Merchant Guild has requested a trade for the gems the Adventurers Guild cannot buy. Recalling the Merchant Guild's rules, Mukouda notes that they usually dislike direct trades. However, Uger tells him that this is because the guild does not want its adventurers to get scammed by the merchants, since the Adventurers Guild is officially handling this transaction. Uger thinks there's no problem doing a direct trade with the merchants. Then, he asks Mukouda if he has any experience in judging an item's value, but he shakes his head. Seeing how inexperienced he is, Uger offers to visit the Merchants Guild with him to get the best price for his goods. Suddenly, Elrond offers to visit the merchants instead, saying that Uger needs his free time since he's so busy. However, Uger immediately sees through his act and yells at him for skipping work once again. He firmly tells Elrond to stay back and do his job, or else he'll sell his most precious item. Shocked, Elrond tells Uger he'll never let him sell his precious dragon fang even if his life depended on it. Finally, Elrond agrees to stay behind, but Mukouda's bottomless stomach pets get hungry. Mukouda asks Uger if they can eat before visiting the Merchants Guild, and Uger tells him to meet him again in 2 hours. Since 2 hours isn't enough, Mukouda decides to buy food instead of cooking everything from scratch. The group walks through the streets, and Fel gets interested in some grilled meat. Mukouda stops at the meat stall, but the poor owner gets terrified of all the hungry pets behind him. After reassuring the owner that the monsters are his familiars, Mukouda asks his pets how much food they want. Fel and Sui think they can easily skin 30 of the meat skewers, while Dora decides to go for 15 instead. After getting all their orders, Mukouda tells the stall owner to make 76 skewers. Shocked by the massive order, the man decides to give Mukouda a discount. However, he refuses to accept the discount, knowing his giant monsters are blocking the poor man's business anyway. Soon, the man hands over the first batch of skewers, so Mukouda hands them over to his familiars. As they eat the grilled meat, the group notice that it's not as good as Mukouda's cooking. Despite that, they enjoy the meat's taste since it has its own unique flavor. Seeing them enjoy the meat, Mukouda takes a bite of his own skewer. He thinks that the charcoal produces a great texture and flavor, and wonders how good his own precious monster meats would taste when grilled. Then, Mukouda realizes he can put even more delicious seasonings on his meat from the online supermarket and gets excited to do a barbecue. However, he doesn't have a barbecue grill, and the online grocery store doesn't sell one either. As he thinks about what to do, Mukouda gets the idea to make Sui create a grill for him. Unfortunately, Sui hasn't seen a grill before, so he wonders how he'd make it. Soon, everyone gets done cleaning their plates, so they all head to the Merchants Guild. While they're waiting in the guild with Uger, the Merchant Guild Master, Adriano, comes to greet them. He invites everyone to a private room, but Mukouda hesitates, wondering if his terrifying familiars should stay outside. Adriano insists he bring them along, so Mukouda agrees. Once inside the private room, they meet the guild's appraiser, Ruslan. Once they sit down, Uger presents a briefcase full of the dungeon gems. Seeing the gems' bright luster, both merchants stifle a shocked gasp. Ruslan takes a ruby and observes it carefully, shocked by its quality. After looking at the rest of the gems, he declares that they're all jewels of the highest quality. Uger nods and shows him the mimic chest. As Ruslan's gaze falls on the chest, he takes out an imperial topaz gem from it, amazed to see one with such a bright glow. Both merchants stare in awe as they examine the shiny gem, knowing it will sell for an absurd amount. Hearing the merchants' praise, even Mukouda is surprised that they're rating his goods so highly. After evaluating their value, Adriano offers Mukouda a total of more than 7,000 gold coins. The price leaves Mukouda stunned and impressed, and he's about to accept the deal until Uger suddenly stops him. Since he has some knowledge about rare items, Uger reminds the merchants that their imperial topaz is a rare item that sells for huge profits to collectors. He also points out that even though all their mimic gems are top quality and perfectly symmetrical, the guild still low-balled the price. While the merchants realize they've been caught, Uger tells them he won't even consider their pathetic bid. Since they're trying to trick a member of his adventurer guild, he threatens to cut off the relations between their two guilds, so the merchants start panicking. They finally reconsider the price and raise their offer to over 9,000 gold coins. Mukouda asks Uger if the amount is fair, and Uger is finally satisfied. With his approval, they sell the gems for 9,500 gold coins. Mukouda then thanks Uger for saving him the extra 2,000. After finishing the deal, they return to the Adventurers Guild, where Elrond acts like he could have gotten Mukouda 10,000 more gold coins if he had gone with him. Since nobody takes him seriously, he quiets down. Then, Elrond asks Mukouda to show his guild card. As he takes out his card, Elrond quickly swipes it and replaces it with a golden card. Mukouda wonders what he just did, so Elrond explains that he promoted him to a rank for conquering the dungeon. Uger explains that Mukouda can now directly accept quests from the kingdom with his new rank, but the pansy man doesn't want to go through so much trouble. He quickly begs Elrond to demote him back to C rank, but the guild master informs him that a rank adventurers get 10 free meals at the guild's high-quality restaurant, as well as permanent in discounts, and the ability to accept quests of any rarity and rewards. Hearing that they can take new quests to hunt for exotic meat and materials, Fel instantly tells Mukouda to accept the promotion. Feeling the pressure from both sides, Mukouda finally accepts his fate. Afterward, he returns returns home and fires up the magic stove. Dora asks him what's for dinner, so Mukouda tells him he's cooking some ground meat, while the group celebrate their upcoming meat buffet. Mukouda finishes taking out the ingredients. As he takes out the ground meat from his storage, he recalls that his old meat grinder broke apart. Thankfully, Sui managed to create a mithril meat grinder for him, so he ended up making tons of ground meat with the new machine. Since he has so much to spare, Mukouda decides to make giant loaves of roasted meat. First, he puts some breadcrumbs in milk to soften them. Then, he chops some onions before sautéing them in a pan. After the onions are ready, Dora adds some mixed vegetables to continue sautéing. Once the mixture is done, Mukouda adds it to his ground meat before adding whisked eggs and seasoning to the bowl. Then, he kneads the meat into a ball and layers his roasting trays with bacon strips. Once the bottom is ready, he stuffs the trays with ground meat before adding his veggies and eggs in the middle. He then stuffs even more meat on top of the veggies and folds the strips on top once the loaves are completed. Finally, Mukouda covers the trays with aluminum foil before putting them in his oven to cook. After a while, he takes out the cooked meat and tests it with a toothpick to make sure it's cooked. Since the meat is ready, he makes some sauce with butter, ketchup, and chuno sauce. After cooking the sauce in his pan, he cuts the loaves into strips and drizzles the sauce over them. Finally, the meatloaves are done, and everyone gets ready to dig in. As his familiars eat, they chomp away without sparing a minute to talk. Seeing them enjoy the food so much, Mukouda thinks it must have been cooked perfectly. He takes his own plate and takes a bite, instantly falling in love with the rich food. Afterward, everyone stuffs themselves full, and Mukouda thinks about giving Yuger a gift for all his help. Knowing that Yuger has a wife and kids, he decides to get some premium sweets for his family. After ordering the sweets, Mukouda checks them to make sure they don't boost the stats too much. Meanwhile, Ninir feels outraged that Mukouda is ordering so many precious sweets without giving her a single one. While she screams that she'll make him pay, the others discuss that his new skill tree has increased the quality of items he can buy as well. Thinking about all the exotic goods they can get from Mukouda's world, they start planning which ones they want to get from him. The next day, while Elran slaves away at his desk, Mukouda offers a basket of baked sweets to Yuger. He takes the basket, but notices a girl's face on one of the cookies. Mukouda tells him it's just a symbol, but Yuger thinks that the girl might be a princess from his country. He wonders if it's okay to eat such precious sweets, but Mukouda reassures him it's fine. Finally, Yuger happily accepts the gifts, thinking his wife and kids would love the sweet treats. Later, Fel asks Mukouda what's for lunch, but he reminds his greedy dog that he just had breakfast half an hour ago. Fel claims that he's just checking the menu, but Mukouda reminds him that he's the one who has to cook all their king-sized 5-star meals. Dora gets panicked, thinking he won't get Mukouda's treat for the day, while Sui also says he loves his master's cooking the most. Mukouda reassures his familiars he'll cook for them, but explains that he just wants a break since he's tired of cooking every day. As Fel asks Mukouda how he's going to cook on a break, he realizes he didn't explain it correctly. Then, Mukouda reveals that he just wants to grill some barbecue for the day since it's easier than cooking fancy dishes. Fel thinks about his offer for a bit before accepting, so Mukouda wonders how he'll grill the food without the equipment. Later, he tries asking a blacksmith to create a custom grill for him, but the dwarf kicks him out, screaming that he makes weapons, not kitchen tools. After that failure, Mukouda asks Yuger for help, but Yuger explains that Dolan's blacksmiths are very proud of their weapon-making skills because their city is full of powerful adventurers. Now, Mukouda understands why he was kicked out, and Yuger tells him that dwarves are just stubborn people in general, but they're also unhealthy drinkers. The mention of alcohol gives Mukouda an idea, and Yuger confirms it, saying he might be able to convince a dwarf to make the grill if Mukouda gives him some good booze. Then Yuger gives Mukouda additional payment for the dungeon items he sold, which he accepts before leaving to make lunch for his gang. After giving his gang a nice bowl of wyvern rice, he opens up the online grocery. Looking through the options, Mukouda thinks it's better to give the dwarves something strong to lower their guard. After deciding on whiskey, he orders a box full of high-quality whiskey. After that, Mukouda visits a dwarf called Ailes. The dwarf asks what kind of weapon he wants, but Mukouda explains that he just needs a cooking appliance and shows him a blueprint of the grill he wants. Although the item looks quite intricate, Ailes dismisses him and tells him to leave the shop. Despite Mukouda's pleas, the blacksmith keeps walking away, so he decides it's time to use his secret weapon. He asks Ailes if he likes alcohol, and and the dwarf stops in his tracks, so Mukouda pulls out a bottle of whiskey. Right after Mukouda opens the bottle, the alcohol's aroma instantly catches Ailes's attention. Before Mukouda can even discuss anything with him, Ailes snatches the bottle away and pours out a cup to try it out himself. In an instant, he falls in love with its flavor and asks Mukouda how he got it, knowing that he's got the dwarf hooked. Mukouda acts like it's a super rare alcohol he got from an exotic island and offers to pay him 5 bottles of it if he makes him the grill. Mukouda's tempting offer finally convinces Ailes, so he agrees to make the grill if Mukouda gives him 10 bottles of whiskey. Eager to get his barbecue as soon as possible, Mukouda happily agrees. While Ailes starts chugging the bottle, Mukouda asks how long it will take to make the grill, and Ailes tells him to come back in 3 days. Then Ailes reminds him that the materials will cost 350 gold coins, so Mukouda nods and leaves. After returning home, Mukouda feels amazed that dwarves would do literally anything to get their hands on alcohol. Then, he remembers that certain powerful gods also like their booze a bit too much, and realizes he hasn't sent them any offerings in a long time. As soon as Mukouda remembers, the gods start screaming at him through telepathy. While they all discuss his punishment, Mukouda expresses his guilt and apologizes for forgetting. However, his sincere regret is not enough to calm their wrath, so Mukouda asks them to calm down and speak one at a time. First, Fenrir asks him about the tenant's skill upgrade and demands that he hand over an entire bakery's worth of premium cakes. Next, Hephaestus tells him he gave Ailes a nice booze to make Mukouda's grill extra special. He reminds Mukouda that the next time he gets a new tenant in his store, he might also unlock a liquor shop as an option. While Mukouda wonders what other exotic items he can unlock by leveling up, Hephaestus tells him that his next tenant option will become available at level 40. So both Vagon and Hephaestus tell Mukouda to level up as soon as possible, but Mukouda shakes his head since that would require lots of hard work. At that moment, Agni suggests that he enter the dungeon to level up faster, but Mukouda doesn't like the idea. Just then, Kisharl steps in and reminds her drunkard friends that it's better to have Mukouda choose a drugstore since that would give her plenty of cosmetic goods. While Mukouda feels relieved he doesn't have to become an alcoholic, Rusalka thinks he should choose a seafood market instead. Hearing them all plan ahead for his grocery store, Mukouda tells the entitled gods he's not going to grind hours of his life just to make them happy. However, they keep pressuring him to do it, so Mukouda threatens to return their blessings so he won't have to send them any more offerings. Fenrir almost faints from the shock, while Rusalka and Vagon realize they're being too impatient. Even Hephaestus admits that he was thinking about his own feelings instead of Mukouda's. Then, Kisharl reminds them all that they still need an apology gift for the number of times Mukouda forgot his offerings. As compensation for his shortcomings, she tells Mukouda to increase the amount of money he spends on their offerings. Excited to get more supplies of treats, the rest of the gods agree, so Mukouda accepts their generous offer. Once they all agree to let him stay at his current level, Mukouda asks them what they want for their next gift. First, Fenrir asks him to buy every single cake listed on the bakery, so Mukouda reminds her he's not a billionaire since she settles for choosing some of the best cakes instead. He shows her all the options. As the menu opens up, Fenrir finds it hard to decide which cake she likes more. Mukouda suggests just getting some of the cakes from the start, so she decides to go in a sequence. Then, he opens up the cosmetics section for Kisharl, while the rest of them wait impatiently since she takes too long to pick. Mukouda just picks a good item for her, so Agni butts in next. She demands a few drinks, and Rusalka tells Mukouda that she wants the same cakes Fenrir received. Finally, Hephaestus and Vagon take a look at all the goodies available. Once everyone has finished ordering, Mukouda piles up their order boxes and sends the offerings to them. While they all rejoice, he feels tired of all the yapping he was forced to go through. Since the gifts ruined Mukouda's mood, he decides to make something special for dinner. After going outside, he pulls out a giant cicatris and rubs it with spices. Once the meat is covered with seasoning, Mukouda takes out some packets of frozen pilaf rice and stuffs the meat with it. Since the rice overflows from the bird's body, Mukouda sews the cavity shut with some skewers. Then, he ties up the bird's feet to keep it in shape, before putting oil on the rest of its body. Finally, he puts the stuffed bird into the oven and waits until it's roasted properly. While waiting for the meat to cook, Mukouda asks Sui to make some larger glasses and bowls for him. After depositing the mithril material into Sui, his slimy body starts whirring while it produces the new cutlery. Soon, Sui produces the finished cutlery, while Mukouda also finishes his roasted bird. Seeing the giant bird on the table, Fel and Dora start drooling, while Mukouda cuts it open to serve them the meat with rice. Soon, they all dig into the food, eagerly biting into the crispy meat. Fel thinks that the meat is good enough on its own, but the rice feels heavenly after being cooked in the meat and oil. Mukouda nods, but warns the gang to watch out for any sharp bones. After the main course, he takes out some puddings for dessert. Sui and Dora devour the pudding, and Mukouda wonders what to do next since he doesn't have any immediate goals. Before he can think of anything, he sits down and falls asleep from exhaustion. Meanwhile, as the gods chow away at their treats, Vagon asks Hephaestus how they should deal with Mukouda's refusal to level up. Hephaestus also wonders what to do, so Vagon suggests secretly giving Mukouda a special skill. Since Mukouda won't realize he's got the skill, Hephaestus agrees to give it to him in his sleep. Soon, Vagon points towards Mukouda's image, which secretly gives him the double experience skill. 3 days later, Mukouda visits Ailes to get his grill. As he enters the shop, the greedy dwarf immediately asks him for the alcohol, so Mukouda gives him a full crate. Once Ailes accepts the alcohol, he takes Mukouda to the back of his shop to show off the grill. It immediately pleases Mukouda, who realizes it's much bigger than it was in his blueprint. Ailes explains that Mukouda's design didn't have much capacity for holding charcoal, so he modified it for a larger area and tastier barbecue. Surprised, Mukouda asks if he should increase the payment, but Ailes keeps it down to 300 gold coins. Since he loves Mukouda's gift, Ailes tells him he doesn't mind gifting him a better product than he paid for. Then, he asks Mukouda how he'll transport the giant grill, so he explains that he has an item box. Mukouda wonders if he can test the grill first, so Ailes allows him to try it out right outside his shop. This surprises him, so Ailes reminds him that he can modify the grill if Mukouda encounters any problems using it. Fel also thinks it's a great idea to try the grill now since it'll mean a quicker lunch for him. Soon, they move the grill outside, where Mukouda takes out some meat for a barbecue. As he puts the giant slabs of meat on the grill, Dora and Sui get impatient to try it out. Mukouda reminds him that since it's a grill, he can't adjust the flame as much, so he needs to be more careful with the meat. While Mukouda focuses on his meat, Ailes puts some sausages on a free spot on the grill, explaining that they're his special homemade sausages. He offers to let Mukouda have some, happy to enjoy another treat. Mukouda offers his own barbecue to Ailes in return. Soon, Mukouda's meat is done grilling, so he cuts it into slices before plating it for everyone. Fel is the first of the group to take a bite, immediately demanding his favorite garlic sauce with the barbecue. Then, Mukouda tells Ailes to try it out, offering some wasabi sauce as a dip. As soon as Ailes takes a bite, he enjoys the treat, thinking that the wasabi freshens the oil's stickiness. Seeing him enjoy the soy sauce, Dora and Sui also dip their meat into the sauce before eating it. While the others eat, Ailes reminds Mukouda to try some sausages. Mukouda happily accepts and takes a bite, instantly enjoying the juicy flavor. Then, Ailes takes out his drink to have with the meat, so Mukouda takes the bottle from him. Quickly, he pulls to the side and takes out his mithril glass for a tastier drinking experience. Before pouring the drink, Mukouda cools the cup with fresh ice to chill it. Once the cup is cold, he fills a portion of it with the drink before adding some soda water to it. Then, he stirs the drink around the ice and garnishes it with some lemon before presenting it to Ailes. As Ailes drinks the special cocktail, he finds it absolutely delicious. Looking inside, he wonders where Mukouda got the crystal clear ice and fizzy soda water and even a mithril cup. Mukouda is surprised that the dwarf actually recognized mithril, so Ailes explains he's the best blacksmith in the entire city. Then, Ailes sits down to finish the rest of the drink, wondering how a master foodie like Mukouda conquered their city's dangerous dungeon. Mukouda wonders how he knew about him, so Ailes explains that everyone in Dolan knows about his great achievement. Surprised, Mukouda looks at his monster teammates, wondering if it was a good idea to attract so much attention with their stunts. A few days later, Mukouda tells the party that he's planning to leave Dolan. Fel doesn't mind, but tells Mukouda to visit the dungeon one last time before leaving. However, Mukouda reminds him that their dungeon stunts are the reason he needs to leave the city since they've gotten too famous. Fel realizes he's right, so he asks if he can just go on a hunt alone to get some meat. Since Mukouda knows he's been itching to get more monster meat, he allows Fel to do it. Dora also decides to join Fel for practice, so Mukouda tells them he'll make some more sausages while they go hunting. Mukouda then asks Sui to help him cook while the other two are out. Happy to help, Sui jumps into his arms, and Mukouda gets ready to make some delicious sausages. Before Fel and Dora leave, Mukouda gives them a bottomless bag to store all the monsters they hunt. He reminds them that they won't be able to process the meat before reaching the next town, so they shouldn't hunt too much. Both of them nod and leave, so Mukouda starts cooking with Sui. He asks Sui to make a special nozzle, then heads out to place an order for a few supplies from the online supermarket. First, Mukouda grinds some meat using a machine before prepping some sheep intestines for the dish. While the intestines desalinate, he adds some seasonings to the ground meat and kneads it all together. Then, Mukouda adds the cooling nozzle to a piping bag and adds the meat inside. Then, he wraps the nozzle with the sheep intestine lining and uses it to squeeze out the meat into wrapped sausages. After completely stuffing the intestines, he shapes the sausages into a nice shape, ready to cook. Afterward, Mukouda starts grilling all the sausages, satisfied with how well they're cooking. Once a sausage is done, he takes a bite and thinks it's made perfectly. Watching him eat, Sui gets excited to try it, so Mukouda gives him the rest of the sausage. Soon, Dora and Fel return from their hunt, upset that Mukouda started eating without them. He mentions that he was only tasting the food to understand how it was prepared, then proceeds to ask them how their hunt turned out. Fel tells him that he had a good hunt, but there were some monsters he couldn't fit into the bag. As Mukouda takes a look, he finds a giant tiger and a rhino monster butchered nearby. He reminds Fel he wasn't supposed to hunt too much, but the greedy dog tells him he just grabbed these monsters since they got in his way. Mukouda sighs helplessly before offering the cooked sausages to the hungry duo. As Fel and Dora both try a sausage, Sui keeps devouring them like a proper machine. Since everyone is enjoying the sausages, Mukouda decides to try one for himself. Since the sausage tastes so good, he orders a drink from the supermarket to go with it. After lunch, Mukouda and the gang prepare to leave Dolan. Both Yuger and Elrond escort them outside the city, so Mukouda feels embarrassed for burdening them. Elrond feels sad that they're leaving so early since he wanted to spend more time with Dora, but the poor dragon is creeped out by him anyway. Although Mukouda nervously laughs off Elrond's crying, the elf suddenly grips his shoulders. With an intense stare, Elrond reminds him to bring back any dragons he hunts to him for proper processing, and Mukouda assures him he'll rely solely on his services. Since Elrond also knows Mukouda intends to visit the Great Ocean, he even tells him to bring back a literal leviathan. Mukouda wonders if even Fel is strong enough to defeat a leviathan, so Fel tells him he has only defeated one in his entire life, surprised that he can actually do it. Mukouda sighs, but tells Elrond they'll only hunt the leviathan if they encounter one by chance. However, Elrond ignores his warning and starts fantasizing about butchering an entire leviathan. Watching him drool over his fantasies, Yuger tells Mukouda to ignore the deranged man and leave before he says something even more unhinged. Afterward, Mukouda leaves with the gang, stopping during their travels to have dinner and sleep. As the days go by, they soon reach a new city called Nahoth, where the guards all get hostile after seeing Mukouda and his gang of murder pigs. Luckily, Mukouda has a shiny new rank guild card from Elrond, which gets him the guards' trust. Once the guards allow him to enter, Mukouda visits the city's guild master, Gorin. Surprised to see Mukouda's legendary familiars in person, Gorin welcomes them and puts out some tea. Once they sit down to enjoy it, Gorin asks Mukouda if he'd be interested in taking a few of their tougher, high-ranked quests. Mukouda agrees, so Gorin tells him he's got two requests. First, he reveals that some carnivorous evil plants are wreaking havoc around their town's forest, so Mukouda will need to eliminate them. Then, he also asks Mukouda to take down some Cyclops monsters, since they've been plaguing the city's digging sites. Understanding the requirements, Mukouda asks his familiars if they can handle these monsters. Fel and Dora feel so bored with these weak monsters that they don't even consider them a problem. Seeing how confident everyone is, Mukouda offers to hunt the monsters the very next day. However, since he currently doesn't have anywhere to stay, he tells Gorin he's searching for a proper rental house to use during his time in the town. Gorin suggests visiting the Merchants Guild for better information. A little while later, Mukouda takes a map and walks over to the town's Merchant Guild, where he hands them a letter of recommendation from Gorin himself. Before long, the Merchant Guild's vice master, Domenico, comes out to welcome him. After giving his introduction, Domenico asks Mukouda whether he requires a larger house to fit his familiars. Mukouda nods and mentions that he'll only need it for about a week. week. When he offers to pay a generous amount for the rental, Domenico presents him with a list of 3 available places he can check out. As Mukouda looks over the 7-room, 10-room, and even a 13-room house, he wonders which one he should rent. Domenico suggests taking the 7-room house since it's large enough to support his pets while also being near the town's center. He also explains that the 7-room house is a luxury place equipped with a special kitchen, magical cooling room, and a tub, so Mukouda immediately decides to get it. Later that evening, after getting the keys to his new place, Mukouda enters the lavish mansion. While his pets appreciate getting a real house to sleep in instead of a stable, Mukouda feels a bit awkward since he has never lived like a celebrity before. Not long after, once they've settled into the living room, Mukouda walks over to the kitchen to check it out. Wondering what to make, he decides to get some potatoes and onions to cook in peace. Mukouda then gets some carrots and other spices before beginning to prep his meal. After taking out a slab of meat, he decides to make some homemade curry. First, he chops some onions and softens them in a pot. Then, he adds the meat, potatoes, and carrots. Once the ingredients are added, Mukouda pours some water for the curry and takes out any waste floating up. Then, he adds some nice curry stock into the pot, stirring it around to dissolve all the flavor. While Mukouda cooks the curry, the monsters all scooch over, curious about the new smell, since none of them has eaten curry before. Mukouda introduces them to the special dish. After plating out the cooked curry with some rice, he offers dinner to everyone. Even though they're all a little hesitant about tasting the new flavor at first, the moment the meat processors take a bite, they start digging in like crazy. While the curry feels a bit spicy, they continue shoveling it down their throats since it just tastes too good. Since Mukouda was worried they'd get put off by the spices, he feels glad that his monsters are enjoying the curry without a problem. Soon, they all finish their current plate and ask for seconds, so Mukouda plates out another portion for them. Once the monsters are devouring their second serving, Mukouda sits down to have his own dinner. Tasting the sweet and sour curry, he thinks he made a good decision to keep the spices at a medium level. After a while, everyone finishes their dinner, satisfied with the food. Once they're all done, they check out the mansion's big bath, excited to have the giant bathroom. Mukouda decides to take a bath every day. Meanwhile, Fel snoops around the corners, hoping not to get noticed, but Mukouda tells him to take a bath anyway. Although Fel tries to protest, Mukouda reminds him that he hasn't cleaned up in a while and the curry will start stinking on his fur, so he agrees to get clean. Since Fel hates stepping into the bath, he just sits on the floor while Mukouda scrubs him clean. The mighty dog enjoys getting car washed by his favorite slave, getting the soap lathered all over his fur. Once the soap is on, Mukouda asks Sui to bring him some hot water. After getting his body washed, Fel tries to creep out of the bathroom, but Mukouda reminds him to get his greasy face clean. Soon, Mukouda washes off the curry remains from Fel's stinky face, so Fel thanks him by shaking off all the water into his face. After drying himself up, Fel starts walking away in his handsome glory, ready to take a giant nap befitting a Fenrir-shaped pig like himself. Traumatized from Fel's bathwater blast, Mukouda and the other two finally get into the bathtub to clean up. After taking a nice, long soak, they all go to the bedroom to rest. Sui invites Mukouda to sleep beside him, prompting Mukouda to climb onto the king-sized bed and settle in for the night. The next day, the party heads out to the forest to hunt the evil plants. Mukouda asks Fel if he can sense the plants, so he tells him that they're all scattered throughout the area. Since the plants are scattered, Mukouda decides to split their party into 2 groups to get the job done quicker. Mukouda tells Dora and Fel to handle the plants deeper in the forest, but Fel wonders if he'll be fine on his own. Mukouda reminds him that he's going to be with Sui, which leaves him feeling disappointed that he won't get to hunt with Fel and Dora. Mukouda tells Sui that he can hunt all the plants he wants, but he just wants to travel with him for protection. Once Sui agrees to go with him, Mukouda gives Fel a bottomless bag to store any magic stones dropped by the evil plants. After Fel and Dora leave, Mukouda takes out a spray bottle, wondering if it'll help him defeat the plants. Thinking about his secret plan, he starts grinning like a creep, but Sui stops him at a strange area. Mukouda notices some broken trees scattered around the area when, all of a sudden, some bushes start rustling, and an evil plant pops out of the bushes. So Mukouda tells Sui to get ready for the fight. Sui quickly jumps and absolutely melts the poor plant, so the rest of its family comes out to avenge it. However, Mukouda decides to brutally finish them all using some powerful store-bought herbicide, which decomposes the plants alive. Watching the entire family erased from existence existence, Mukouda celebrates his new weapon. Soon, even more evil plants come out to attack them, but Mukouda and Sui pluck them all out like weeds. Once they defeat the giant horde, Sui warns Mukouda that a giant plant is approaching them. Just then, a huge, three-headed evil plant boss appears from the forest. It quickly sends its roots to attack Mukouda, so he repels it with the herb spray. However, the spray is unable to deal enough damage, so the plant completes its attack. Although Mukouda narrowly dodges the attack, he gets knocked to the ground by the movement. Then, the monster's three faces lunge to attack him, but he manages to wither their faces with more spray. Seeing that the spray is still effective, Mukouda focuses his attacks on the roots and finishes off the giant plant. Afterward, he counts all his spoils of war with Sui. While Sui wonders if Mukouda is okay, Fel and Dora soon return from their hunt. They tell Mukouda that although there were a lot of evil plants, they were able to defeat them all easily. Hearing this, Sui feels disappointed since he wanted to spray a lot more of his pew-pew lasers. Since they're all itching for more fights, Fel suggests hunting the Cyclops as well to complete both quests. Although Mukouda feels shocked, he is left completely helpless since everyone else is so eager. Sometime later, the group reaches the digging site where Fel and the gang obliterate all of the giant Cyclops. A littler while, Mukouda heads back home, where everyone takes another bath. As they step out, Fel notices that Sui has evolved again. Surprised, Mukouda opens up Sui's status, realizing that he's now classified as a huge slime, with a new skill called Giganticide. Mukouda asks Sui if he feels any different, so the slime tells him he can now grow to a giant size. Pleased, Mukouda tells Sui they'll test out his new form before heading to the Adventurers Guild the next day. Then, he checks Fel's stats. Noticing that he hasn't leveled up much, Fel reminds him that they need to explore the ocean dungeon since he can only level up against stronger monsters, which leaves Mukouda a bit scared. Then, he checks Dora's stats, finding out that he gained some levels as well. Fel then tells Mukouda to take a look at his own stats, and when he does, he's shocked to see that he gained quite a few levels this time. Mukouda wonders if he leveled up because of the evil plants, but then realizes that he has a new double exp skill. Shocked, Mukouda wonders where he got the skill from, and recalls that the entitled Sky Brats wanted him to level up so they could have more treats. Enraged, he swears to chew them out for toying with his skills the next time they call him. That was episode 9. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.